pursuit for the NHL goals record. I'm Thomas Tisdale, joined alongside by Derek Beaulieu and Nathan Rogers. But you, yes, you, the listener, have the unique privilege of joining our show today by calling into the number 718-817-2750. The number is 718-817-2750. Call in and we can talk any sports you'd like. We can talk pickleball, we can talk bowling, but of course, if you want to talk any of the major sports in the U.S., we are more than willing to have a conversation with you about that. We're also giving away Nets and Yankees tickets throughout the show. We'll ask you a question, and the first callers to get the question right will score the tickets. Stick around to hear the question, and maybe you'll win the tickets. Guys, it's been a great week, and I'm excited to get the show started. But before we get into really the content of the show, how are y'all doing today? Derek, we'll start with you.
I'm feeling pretty good today and this week. Last night, we were talking about this earlier. I went to go see the Minecraft movie last night. I won't lie. It's been hyped up, all over TikTok, all over social media. And I'm going to be honest, it might be the worst movie I've ever seen in my entire life. No offense to the creators and no offense to Minecraft itself. I love Minecraft. No offense. But it literally might be the worst thing I've ever seen. But other than that, it's been a pretty good week. Pretty stress-free. Went to a Yankee game, We'll talk about that later, of course. We'll talk about the Yankees later. But pretty good week so far.
Yeah, awesome week. I have to agree with you there. Thursday, I went to the Yankees game. So awesome. That was my first game I've been to this year. I just thought it was really cool to just get there. Fordham free tickets, snag those up. It was fun. Having a really good week over in FUV, over at Rose Hill. But the weather coming up is just it's dampening my mood. It's making me a little upset. But the week we had before, like this previous week, was so good, and now it's like 45 and like raining, and now I'm like, all right, so.
Yeah, that's pretty solid. I've had a pretty good week. It started, I guess, if you classify last Saturday as the previous week. I went to the Yankees game where they broke the record with 9 home runs.
Lucky.
And I think I have a tendency to go to games where teams break records. I went to Denver this past summer, and the Rockies are really bad at baseball, and that's okay. But I was excited to go. I think it's a really cool ballpark. Maybe I would get to see a couple home runs, and they put up 16 runs, and they've never done that ever. I think someone hit for the cycle. Toglia, I think, hit for the cycle, and the Rockies just had a historic day in what was a really bad season last year. So I think and those are the 2 games I've been to relatively recency, was the record-breaking Yankees game and the record-breaking Rockies game. So I think if I keep going to these games, maybe.
So you're just good luck.
Yeah, I think
okay.
But I can't overdo it. I think I have to wait.
You can't abuse the power.
Yeah, I think I have to wait to go to another Yankees game in the playoffs so they eventually do well.
100%.
And so that's going to transition us into my first question for y'all today is, what is your favorite sports memory in terms of going and seeing a game, or maybe it's just watching a game from home? What is your favorite sports memory and just growing up?
I'm going to start with, I actually have 2. I'm going to keep them short, though, just because I have 2. One we talked about a little earlier. Last year, I went to ALDS Game 1 of the Yankees, where they played the Royals in a 6-5 victory. And the game, I went with my parents. It was my first playoff game ever. And it was a fantastic game. And then the game went back and forth. There was so much action. It was jam-packed. It was great. And it was also the first game I went to last year where the Yankees actually won, because, as you said, you have a tendency to see records. I have a tendency to see the Yankees lose, because the first game I went to last year, we lost to the Astros. It was the only game we lost to the Astros the whole year. I went to a Kansas City game where it was a 4-game set. They won the first 3, and we walked off in the last one. I went to Tropicana. Isaac Paredes immediately in the first inning hit a home run off Carlos Rodon. I'm the opposite of you, Thomas. I'm just unlucky. But we did see a win in ALDS Game 1. And my other memory is not a Yankee memory, actually. It's still baseball, but it's not a Yankee memory. The 2016 World Series it's one of the best World Series I've ever watched in recent history. I think it probably is the best World Series since 2016. But I remember watching Game 7 with how impactful and how crazy Game 7 was. Just I was watching it downstairs, and I would run upstairs to go like yell at my mom about what was happening at the game because she was busy doing whatever. But I would just keep going up and down the stairs. This stuff kept happening because of how jam-packed it was. But watching the Cubs win the World Series, it kind of made me a Cubs fan for a little bit. I'm not as big of a Cubs fan anymore, but I watched them for a while. They were my NL team as I watched the Yankees in the AL. But those are my two big memories. That World Series was electric.
Yeah, I'm gonna share two because we were talking before and I shared one, but I've been thinking and it just sparked my memory. So I'm gonna go with I don't know exactly when it was, but I went to an A's game in Oakland at the Coliseum. R.I.P. God bless the Coliseum. I was there with all of my friends. We watched like some like day game, maybe first game of a doubleheader or something, walk off, and for like probably their 50th win of the season or something.
Probably.
Yeah, in like October probably after they'd even made it. And then I literally like in the Coliseum, you would walk across like this like courtyard and like go through a hallway, and you would go to Oracle and you would literally watch a Warriors game. So I watched the Warriors beat James Harden and the Rockets in Oracle. Also RIP to that. RIP to everything in Oakland, because that just, it hurts my feelings. But in 2018, after we went back to back, the Warriors did, I went to the parade, and that I skipped school I skipped, not school. I was in like summer school or like some camp or something. My mom was like, we're going. It was awesome. Yeah. So those are my two, 2018 Warriors parade and A's Warriors like back-to-back wins.
One thing that's interesting about the people alongside me today is that we're not necessarily from these major market teams. None of us are from New York City. I think Derek was saying earlier that we're combined,
4,000 miles away.
4,000 miles away from New York. And I'm from Tennessee. Derek's from South Carolina. And Nathan is from Oakland, which once had the pleasure of being sort of this hub of sports, but has since dissolved as teams have moved away. Yeah. The Raiders, the A's, and of course the Warriors. And so you mentioned during your story about the Cubs game where you didn't have a connection to the Cubs, but because you're from South Carolina and you don't have these regional connections.
And I'm not going to be a Braves fan. There's no way.
It's like the Braves for me, which is the closest baseball team, is 4 hours away, which feels a little bit distant, and I don't necessarily have that connection to them. And I think it's fascinating how we were able to develop our fandoms, even though we're not regionally connected to these teams. I'm a Yankees fan, but I'm also a Baltimore Ravens fan for some strange reason. And I'm also a LeBron fan because I remember one of the things, I went to a summer camp in North Carolina, and I would come home and I would watch the Spurs versus the Heat in, what was it, 2013 or 2012. And like that was my first connection with the NBA, and so I became a LeBron fan in that moment. Not even because I felt any sort of connection to the Miami Heat or the San Antonio Spurs. So I think it's fascinating how we've all developed our fandoms as a result of sort of these television games and these sort of iconic cultural moments. And I think that's going to do it for our first segment. Coming up, we're going to talk March Madness. Even though it's April, we're going to talk the Elite Eight before finally talking about the Final Four. Don't go anywhere.
Hey, it's Chaz McAdams here calling you to tune in to WFUV Sports One-on-One, New York's longest-running sports call-in show. With hot takes covering all sports from the five boroughs and beyond, to interviews with some of the biggest names in sports media. We're live Saturdays on the WFUV Sports YouTube from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m., and then later on 90.7 FM from 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. Come join us next Saturday for One-on-One.
What's up, everyone? I'm Will Talent.
And I'm Evan Harkin. We're two of your hosts for NFL Friday, WFUV Sports' exclusive NFL podcast.
From breaking down the weekly slate to fantasy football pickups, we've got you covered on all things around the NFL.
Stay tuned for our hosts' weekly picks as they compete against each other all season long.
Football is here, and so is NFL Friday.
Welcome back to One on One, New York's longest running radio call-in show. If you'd like to talk March Madness and specifically the Elite Eight during the segment, the number is 718-817-2750. We're going to start today, or this section, with what was probably the most exciting game of the Elite Eight, and that was the Florida Gators taking on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. And in what was the only non-1-2 matchup in the Elite Eight, the rest of the games were matchups between the number 1 seed and the number 2 seed. And this was an absolute thriller. Texas Tech was down by, I believe, 10 in the first half, and then they come back. They have the lead by 9 with 3 minutes to go, and then Florida, and specifically Walter Clayton Jr., absolutely takes over. Texas Tech can't make their free throws. They can't get defensive rebounds, and Florida closes them out by going on, I believe it was a 15-3 run in the final 3 minutes. Just an incredible performance in what has been a relatively sort of tame NCAA tournament so far, just overall in terms of excitement and late finishes. The question I have today is, we talk about sort of the ability of Florida and their ability to go on these long sustained runs where they go 10-0 and they absolutely clamp down defensively, and then they can explode by just making a couple threes and getting a couple offensive rebounds. But then we can also talk on the other side of the coin. You can talk about the Texas Tech sort of late collapse where they are not doing well at playing really fundamental basketball, I would say. They struggled from the free throw line. They only made 54% of their free throws. And Derek, we'll start with you. How much would you attribute this Florida win? How much would you say it is Walter Clayton Jr. taking over, or how much would you say it is Texas Tech just falling apart and just not being necessarily clutch?
I don't know if you can necessarily attribute it 100% to either thing. I think it's definitely a 50-50 kind of thing, because basketball, as we all know, is a game of heavily based on just whoever has the better run or better multiple runs in the game. And the way to win basketball games is to have good runs, but also to prevent the other team from having their own good runs. So I think it is a big part of Florida's game to have their own kind of long runs where they can go, like you said, 15-3 to close out a win. But it's also Texas Tech's failure on their part to prevent that run. They had that lead by you said, I believe, by 9. They had that lead, they had it down, but they were unable to prevent the run. They were unable to prevent the high scoring from Florida, and that was kind of their downfall. Preventing that run was their big failure.
Yeah, I love this Florida team. I mean, to see them make the Final Four with Todd Golden just at the helm, I just love to see the Gators make it. I think they are, I mean, maybe other than Duke, but I just think this Florida team is so physical. I think when you have Condon, you have the best guard in college basketball on earth right now with Clayton Jr. And the Gators, this is important, since February 1st, they've only lost once, and it was on February 25th. So they're playing their best basketball when it's needed the most. And I love this team. I think it's not a hot take. I think they're going to win, and they're going to make the chip. They're going to win today. But yeah, just like also in that game, Clayton Jr. he hit one of those probably the craziest 3-pointer I've seen in the tournament so far. He dribbles out with 3 minutes left. They're down by 9. He dribbles out with the basket to his back and just dribbles to the 3-point line, chucks up a 3 and hits it. And I'm like, oh wow, Florida's going to win this game. Florida was down by 9 with 3 minutes to go. Texas Tech missed the front end of 2 1-and-1s, and that was the game. They just couldn't, at the charity stripe, get it done. And Florida is back to the Final Four since first time since 2014.
And we're going to talk a little bit more about the matchup between Florida and Auburn in a later segment. But the thing that concerns me about this Florida team is that they seem a little susceptible to being almost too comfortable in these high-pressure moments. They were down by 9, but it never felt like there was a panic. And I think that could be used to their advantage, but it could also be sort of their downfall where, they get too comfortable, they dig themselves in too deep of a hole, and then next thing you know, it's far too late to come back. They're down by 10 with a minute left, and it just doesn't seem like they're going to do it. And now we're going to transition to the South Regional, and we're going to talk about this Auburn Tigers team versus the Michigan State Spartans. And I'm going to be honest, I've been super critical of this Michigan State team since really late January. I thought their offensive woes and their offensive struggles would eventually catch up to them. And I had them going out in the round of 32. Clearly, I was wrong, but I think this Elite Eight is right about where their ceiling was. So my first question for y'all today is, do you consider this season a success for this Michigan State team? Was this tournament run right about where you expected them to be? Did you expect them to go farther? Did you expect them to go shorter? Nathan, we'll start with you. What are your thoughts on this Michigan State season and specifically this tournament run?
Yeah, I really I liked MSU. I think their defense was somehow underrated as a 2 seed. I had them going to the Sweet 16, so I predicted that. But I liked this MSU team. I think as I said, their defense was really good. I love the coaching of Tom Izzo. And yeah, in the Big Ten, those Big Ten teams, I liked that conference this year, and I really enjoyed watching MSU.
Yeah, I mean, if we're going to talk about the game specifically, like you said, offensive woes, I mean, they shot 34% from the field, so if expecting this team that maybe shoots 34% from the field, even with, like Nathan, you said, their defense being underrated, doesn't necessarily seem like an Elite Eight appearance is expected from a team that ends up shooting 22-64 from the field and 7 for 23 from 3 in an Elite Eight game to try and go to the one of the final rounds. So it doesn't necessarily seem like an expectation of Michigan State.
Yeah, and I totally agree with y'all on this Michigan State team. I thought their defense was obviously one of the best in the country all season, but their offense always sort of lagged behind. And it was sort of reminiscent to me of a Houston team from past years where their defense was always played at an elite level, but they were susceptible to these scoring droughts. And this is, I think, ultimately what cost them in the Auburn game. And Auburn is just far too good defensively and offensively to let Michigan State back into the game. I know it was a 6-point game, and so that sort of creates the illusion that it was a rather competitive game, but that first half from Auburn was absolutely dominant, and I just think there was no way Michigan State was ever going to win this game, to be honest. And I apologize to the MSU fans out there. I don't know how many are listening right now, but this MSU team I was not high on, and I was shocked to see them go this far. And we'll now transition to the other side of the bracket. We're going to talk about arguably the best team in the country right now in the Duke Blue Devils, and they absolutely demolished the Alabama Crimson Tide. Alabama coming off a historic performance against BYU where they put up 105 points, I believe, against a decent BYU defense, but obviously Alabama's offense has been the focal point of their team so far, and they really exploded, especially behind the 3-point line in that one. But in this game, it felt like Duke just turned it up another level defensively. And that's my first question for you today. Was the Alabama performance, especially the shooting performance, was that more of a regression to the norm in terms of Alabama was never going to be able to recreate that shooting performance as they did in the Sweet 16, or how much credit do you give to this Duke defense? And Derek, we'll start with you. What has impressed you most about this Duke team, or was the performance and the result indicative of a Duke dominance, or just an Alabama just struggle from the three-point line?
I think it may be because of the Duke Blue Devils shutting down Alabama, because as you said, putting up 105 in the Sweet 16 is not an easy feat. It's definitely not anything that is like can just happen by chance. I mean, it's definitely a one-of-a-lifetime performance to put up that many points in the Sweet 16, but then you drop down to 65, and there can't be an explanation of just simply they were on one day and off another. It's not as simple as Alabama had a one-in-a-lifetime game, and then they go into their next game against Duke and just completely fall to only put up 65. So I think it's, in my opinion, a lot of what Duke was doing defensively. I mean, it definitely seems that way if you just simply look at the scores, 105 to 65. So that's what I mean, it definitely does attribute to Alabama maybe not being as hot shooting as well as they did in their last game. But you do have to give Duke their favors. They definitely were doing everything they could to shut down Alabama, and it certainly worked when they win by 20.
Yeah. Nathan, do you agree with Derek's argument that it was just a Duke dominant, especially on the defensive side of the court?
Yes, 100%. Alabama, the nation's #1 scoring offense, holding them to 65 points and below 0.9 points per possession in the Elite Eight, like that's something you have to tip your cap to. This Duke team, excuse me, it's one of the best ever they've had. I think Cooper Flagg is arguably one of the best, if not the best, player to come from Duke. We'll probably talk about that later.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm just. Did sparks just fly? Was that a hot take? I love this Duke team. They just don't have weaknesses. Like I don't see a weakness. They have the 4th best defense, and they have the #1 ranked offense left in the tournament right now. I see them running away with the chip. But to go back to this Bama game, the Duke freshmen are just so good because Flagg didn't really shoot that well. No. Against this Bama team. Bama was doing really well against Flagg, but when you have to deal with like such a good player that Flagg is, you have to, then it opens up the floor for Con Knipple and all these other guys. So and Proctor, Tyrese Proctor. So Con Knipple had 21, 5 and 5. Proctor had 17. You have to also tip your cap to Mark Sears. He's one of the best guards in Bama history. And one of the best in the country. He goes out strong, but Duke is just such a powerhouse of a team. Yeah, to answer your question, I'm going to agree with Derek, and I am also going to segue into they're winning the tournament. I'm sorry.
I mean, I don't – it's not a hot take say that Duke is going to win the championship, and you highlight the freshmen around him and that this is an incredibly talented Duke roster, incredibly young, incredibly inexperienced, but they don't play like it. And so I think that's gonna perfectly segue into our next game, in which is a bit of a contrast with this Duke roster. We're gonna talk about the Houston Cougars, and they are an incredibly experienced roster. I think their top player, LJ Cryer, has over 140 career games, and that's just an incredible just a feat to reach, but then he's also a national championship with Baylor in 2022. And obviously it pains me as a Tennessee Volunteers fan to see them peter out in such a way, only put up 15 in the first half, and then when they were finally able to get things clicking offensively, it was just far too late, and Houston just really answered any sort of momentum that Tennessee was able to get. And this is a more general question about sports and in terms of supporting your fan base. You know you're going to lose the game. Would you rather lose by a large amount of runs, points, goals, whatever it may be? Or would you rather lose on this sort of heartbreaker, buzzer beater, whatever it may be? Derek, what would you prefer as a sports fan? Let's say the Yankees. Would you rather them get blown out, get swept 4-0 in the World Series, for example, or would you rather them lose in Game 7 on a walk-off.
Okay, well, I don't love that you bring in the Yankees in World Series because we all know how that went last year. But to answer your question, I 100%, without a doubt, would rather lose in a Game 7 walk-off than get swept.
Interesting.
It is, in my opinion, 100% worse to go into maybe a finals game, Game 7, or finals game, Game 4, you're down 3-0 and you lose again. Game 4, you're swept. You go into World Series, you go down 3-0, you go into Game 4, you get swept. It is 100% more embarrassing to go in and lose 4 games in a row like you never even had a chance than to win 3 games, go into Game 7, maybe you do have a chance, maybe you have a lead, and then you buzzer beater maybe in Game 7, maybe a walk-off home run in Game 7. I'd much rather lose in Game 7 by a walk-off or by a buzzer beater, any kind of walk-off or last-minute effort like that, because as a fan, I would have a chance. I would have hope. I would have some kind of happiness in the games that they win or the leads that they have. But if I get swept, I have none of that. I just see losing, and I feel like we had no chance as a fan, like my team had no chance. I'd much rather have a chance, and maybe the heartbreak is worse with a buzzer beater or some kind of last-minute effort from the other team where everything falls apart at the last second. But I'd much rather have that chance.
Yeah, I gotta agree. As an athlete myself too, at the collegiate level, like I'm a swimmer, so like it's just a game of, it's a sport of, like football is a game of inches. Swimming is just literally a game of like hundredths of a second. So if you're swimming and your legs are just a piano's on your back and you're gonna drown, right? And you touch that wall and the guy next to you out-touch you by .01. You look at the clock, but you look at your time first. So that was kind of my analogy of this answering the question is you can have hope because if you lose on a game winner or like a heartbreak, like walk-off home run, something like that, or if you lose a race by .01, you could have still had a really good game, something to go into the next segment of a season or the next game or the next series or whatever with like some sort of attitude, right? Like mental stability. Like we're talking about college basketball, like Maryland, like such a heartbreak those last 3 games and that like going into the tournament, like the game winners they lost to. Remember like Michigan, they lose to that coast to coast layup. I was watching that and I'm like, wow, that just. But then and Queen has the layup drive off 1 foot, like game winner, and that's because as an athlete you have to look at your losses like improvements and not something to look down on yourself for. So yeah, to answer your question, yes, I would rather have a heartbreak, absolute heartbreak.
Okay, I can't disagree with that athlete perspective. Obviously, you come speaking from experience for that, so I'm not going to disagree with that. But I do disagree
with the fan?
I think as a fan, I'd rather see my team get swept because if it goes to a Game 7, you have so much hope. And to see that ripped away from you, I think is arguably so much worse. But then you're also going to be reliving that moment for years to come because if let's say you give up a walk-off, you are 100% going to see that on top 10 walk-offs in MLB postseason history. Like you're going to see that clip for years to come, but no one's ever really going to talk about you getting swept. It's just like, oh,
Thomas, they talk about you getting swept. As a person that's a fan of a team that got swept in 4 games when they had a lot of potential and hope, it feels like your heart gets ripped out and torn to pieces, especially when one of those games is a game winner in Game 1 in Boston Garden when you were supposed to be at that game. And I thank God I wasn't at that game. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm talking about the Brooklyn Nets getting swept by the Celtics 2 to 3 years ago now. I don't even remember. It's so far out of my mind. But it is the worst feeling as a fan to get swept. I'll be honest. I would rather have that game gone back. Actually, as a fan that has gotten swept and has gotten their heart ripped out by Game 7 loss in the same 3-year span, yeah, no, none of it's fun, and I'd rather get walked off at the end.
Okay.
Because then you have no bragging rights if you get swept.
That's true.
Because you can't even
But
say,
hey,
we took him to 7.
Yeah, you
We
made
took
it
him
all
to
the way
6.
to the World Series or like the finals, but you also just immediately get swept.
Also, if that team goes on, we're talking about series now, but like if that team goes on to win the chip, you can be like, oh, well, we took them to 7, so like, there's got to be some
then you're you're
hashtag
the best
respect
team.
there.
Yeah.
Right?
And then
if you get
also-
swept, it's like you don't even have there's a loss of credibility there.
You get made fun of so much.
For sure.
And
Yeah,
then
you get thrown
also
in the trash.
you take a team to Game 7, you have something to look forward to next year. You take that heartbreak, you take that loss into hunger for more. You take that hunger into we want to win Game 7 next year instead of losing. That's my take. That's what I think. I think it turns into
I'm
hunger.
clearly in
We're teaming up basically against Thomas.
I'm
That's
clearly
basically
in the
what's happening.
minority here. Our producer Kurt Sippel has chimed in to basically just tear apart any sort of argument I had. So I guess I'll just go home and I'll prefer being swept. Anyway, to relate it back to the game, I think I'd rather watch this Tennessee performance than see Tennessee lose in a heartbreak. Maybe across the series it's a little bit different. But at least for this game, I didn't really have hope that Tennessee was going to win. I knew this was about where the ceiling was, and I didn't have these lofty expectations of how far Tennessee would go. Anyway, that's going to do it for this segment, recapping Elite Eight and also talking about our fandoms, I suppose. And we're going to, after this break, we're going to return to March Madness, and we're going to preview the Final Four matchups, as well as talk about the future of college basketball in this new NIL era. Don't go anywhere.
Hey, this is Chris Carino, Fordham and WFUV class of 1992. WFUV is your home for all things Fordham athletics, with live coverage of Fordham football, Fordham men's and women's basketball, in addition to our Saturday show, One-on-One. Stay right here on 90.7 FM for all things WFUV sports.
Welcome back to One-on-One. I'm Thomas Tisdale, and we are going to now dive into perhaps the biggest sporting event in the next couple of weeks, and that is March Madness. It's continued on, and we have the Final Four tonight in San Antonio. We have Florida, Auburn, Duke versus Houston. We're going to dive into each of the matchups before finally giving our predictions, and then also just talk about the general college basketball landscape. We're first going to talk about the Florida versus Auburn game. 2 1 seeds, both from the SEC. Tip-off is at 6:09. Earlier in the season, Florida beat this Auburn team 91-80. And so Auburn has a little bit of a chance at redemption here, obviously. Maybe has a little bit more at stake beyond just making the national championship, which I feel is a pretty big incentive. The Florida Gators, the route to the Final Four, they defeated Norfolk State 95-69. They then defeated reigning champs UConn 77-75, in which was a pretty tight game, pretty exciting game. And then they demolished the Maryland team 87-71 before a really dramatic come-from-behind victory against Texas Tech that we just talked about in the previous segment. And then Auburn, they defeated Alabama State pretty handedly, then defeated a good Creighton team that looked really good, especially in that first matchup in the round of 64. Then they defeated a Michigan State team pretty handedly, and then a Michigan State team just to sort of round out and defeat all the Michigans, I suppose, in this tournament. They beat them 70-64. The keys for this game is that Florida has probably the most explosive offense in the country, if not number 2 behind Duke. And the key for Auburn in this game is how are they going to be able to minimize the Florida offense, and specifically Walter Clayton Jr. And then on the other side, how was Florida going to answer Janai Broome, which was arguably the best player in the country. He obviously did not win the AP Men's Basketball Player of the Year award. He was second behind Cooper Flagg. What are you watching for in this game, and eventually who do you think is going to come out on top on this game? Derek, we'll start with you.
If you look statistically at Florida and Auburn, they're pretty similar statistically. I mean, Florida shoots 47%, Auburn 48%, but that's just looking pure statistically. And I mean, if you look at the momentum from the Elite Eight, Auburn definitely with their big win over Tennessee, they seem to have kind of that momentum factor. I think with that big win, they might feel like they're more prepared for this Final Four matchup. But the Gators also with their tight win, maybe they feel the pressure, and the pressure maybe makes diamonds. Maybe pressure pushes this Florida team to be better. But I'm not 100% sure who comes out on top. This seems like it's going to be a very close game between Florida and Auburn, with how tight they are statistically and how tight they may be with the pressure and the momentum. I really am not sure, but if I had to pick a team, I might go with Auburn, to be honest with you.
I like that.
Wow,
I like that.
Okay. Yeah, I'm taking Florida. I think I said it before, but I think they are the most physical team. I think they're more physical than Duke. They win 13-0 to start the season, and then they finish 15-0 and won the SEC tournament. And also the SEC, did they have 14 at-large bids? Was it 14?
Yeah, 14.
Yeah, the most ever, right, for the SEC. So they won like the best conference that the tournament's ever seen. And this team was not supposed to be that good, but like before the season, they were 21st in that preseason top 25. But now they're 3rd in KenPom, they're 10th in defense. I really like this Florida team. But on the flip side, on the other side, is Broome. I think the key to this game is Broome has to put up 25 plus. He has to put up 30. I think he has to score 30 in order to even like be within 5 to this Florida team, because we know what Clayton's going to do. We know what they're going to do on the offensive side. But Florida and Auburn also played in February, and Florida basically, and it was an away game for the Gators. They were down in Auburn, and Florida ran them out of the building, and they won 90-81. And Broome, and that game, Broome shot 7 of 16. So the key for Auburn, it just feels like a one-man show, because no one else really put up 10 or more points in their last couple of games other than Broome. So if and also Broome, he got injured, right? He had the elbow thing that was kind of like messy, and then he like the broadcast was like, oh, he just mouthed to the bench like he's done, and everyone was like, oh my God. But he comes back and he hits that 3, that dagger of a 3, and they're back in the game. So Broome is the key for this Auburn team. It's a one-man show in my opinion, but I think the lights are just going to be too bright for Auburn. And I think Florida is just going to run them out of the building. I have them winning by 10.
My head says Florida, but my heart says Auburn. And in the beginning of the tournament, when I was making my bracket, I chose Auburn to make it to the national championship. And I'm a little conflicted about whether the play that I've seen from both Florida and from Auburn has changed my mind on that. I think Auburn has had the easier path. They didn't have to play a UConn team, which I think was underseeded. They didn't have to play a Maryland team. They didn't have to play a Texas Tech team. But they obviously went through a relatively tough schedule, and I think they dominated it. And so I think you talk about the overall momentum is with Florida. They're 15-0, including the SEC tournament, and they've lost one game, since February 1st. So yeah. I think the overall momentum's with Florida, but I think – the momentum specifically within this tournament is with Auburn. And I think they have a little bit more to prove. And you mentioned how it's a bit of a one-man show at Auburn. And I think that if there was to be a downfall for this Auburn Tigers team, it would be the over-reliance on Janai Broome. I think the talent around him, they're pretty physical, they're pretty good defensively, but the scoring around him needs to step up in a big way. It was Jahad Pettiford was the only one who scored double digits in the game against Michigan State. Other than that, it was just Janai Broome just being the best player in the country. So if Auburn can hit their shots from behind three and they can find a way to get the offense going besides just Janai Broome, I think they have a really good chance. And ultimately, I think that's what's going to happen. That's what I'm predicting. The thing that concerns me about this Florida team is, we mentioned it last segment, was the comfort level. I think at times they can get not necessarily complacent, but they can get too comfortable to an extent where the other team can go on runs and they dig themselves in too deep of a hole that they can't quite come out of. And I think Auburn has the talent or the defensive talent to counter most of Florida. I think they can find a way to minimize Walter Clayton Jr. to an extent. But if Walter Clayton Jr. goes off, then I think this Florida team wins. But I'm predicting Auburn to win. I had them making the national championship in the beginning of the tournament. And until they lose, I'm going to continue to choose them. And now on the other side of the bracket, we have the Duke Blue Devils playing number 1 Houston. Duke beat Mount St. Mary's, Baylor, Arizona, and Alabama, pretty much all in dominating fashion. The only close game relatively was this Arizona game. And I know they said they won by 7, but Arizona just had sort of a late run, but it really wasn't competitive at all. And we can talk about the Duke offense and specifically Cooper Flagg, but you mentioned it last segment about how much talent is around him and how it's not just a one-man show at Duke. And on the other side of the matchup is the Houston Cougars team, which is incredibly experienced. They have a lot of old guys. I think their average lineup age is 22, 23, which is insane, but it's just the reality of sort of the transport portal era and the sort of COVID exemptions and stuff like that. And to reach the Final Four, they defeated SIU Edwardsville, Gonzaga, which was a pretty tough matchup. They beat number 4 Purdue by 2 before a really probably their best performance of the tournament so far against a number 2 Tennessee team, where they stifled a good offense and were good enough offensively to beat this Tennessee team. I know you said you have Duke winning the national championship, Nathan. Could you explain to me why you have Duke winning this game, and do you think this is going to be a close game at all?
Yes, I think it's going to be really close. I wouldn't be surprised if it even goes to OT, knock on wood, but Duke is the most talented team. They're the longest, they're the biggest. They just have so much length. Their offensive efficiency is just miles ahead, I think, of this Cougars team. But the separating factor for Houston is their defense and rebounding. Houston is the best defensive team in the country, and if the Cougars can control tempo, if they can play at their pace, I mean, we're at Fordham, and Ergo would always talk about for basketball, if you play at your pace, 90% of the time you will win, because you're going to control how many possessions, or you're going to get to the foul, you're going to get to the charity stripe. You can kind of play your game, you can control it. So I think if Houston can control the tempo, they can fight against this Duke team. I think it's going to be really close. I just think Tyrese Proctor is going to be the guy I think he's going to be the player of the game. Flagg's the best player in college basketball. Everyone knows that. And Colin Knuppel is one of the best scorers in the tournament. But Proctor is just such a difference maker. And I think with his catch and shoot ability, he's just been on fire. I don't think the Cougars have enough to get behind Proctor.
Yeah, and like you said, the biggest thing for Houston is going to be control. I mean, controlling, as we've been saying, this physical, powerful Duke offense. So the biggest thing is just going to be how well, not if you can contain, but how well you can contain anyone on Duke from scoring at all or doing anything on offense. The biggest thing is going to be keeping Duke from doing what they want, essentially. Keeping them from being in their own tempo, from their own timing, keeping them from doing what they want to do on their side of the ball, and keeping them from doing what has been working for them in this tournament so far and why they're the 1 seed and why they have the best offense in the tournament.
Yeah, I think Emmanuel Sharp, I mean, his nickname is literally Crash. He's just so good. He's just a tremendous shooter. He's fearless. And Duke, we talked about the Arizona game against the Wildcats. Duke was down at half, correct? Right?
Yeah.
I think they were down by like 6. And then it just wasn't enough for Arizona at the end. They won by, what was it, 7? Duke did. But it really just felt like they barely won. And that was a lot for this Duke team, and that was Arizona. And Arizona is just nowhere near Houston, and I think Duke is going to have a fight against the Cougars here. You got to be ready to go against the number 1 defense. I mean, you just have to.
Yeah, I mean, it's completely a matchup between an historically efficient offense and the Duke Blue Devils versus the number 1 defense in Houston.
I think what actually comes into this at the end of the day is which team gets the lead first. Because I think whatever team gets that 4-point lead first would probably be the one that wins. Because this Houston defense is so good where a 4-point lead will feel like 25. They guard you from the parking lot. They are inefficient. They are very efficient shooting wise. So actually, the best way I could describe it, this is how I heard. Oh my God! Now I'm blanking on Dan Hurley's name for some reason, but. If Dan Hurley described it, he said, St. John's is like Houston, but Houston is better St. John's. That's how I believe it is. Houston is what everything that St. John's wanted to be this year and wasn't. They have great offense. They have suffocating defense. And I think that's exactly what Duke has, 1, not experienced all year. 2, as why I think Houston's winning it all, because they are just that good of a basketball team. They are just that well built that Houston just does not have a competition in comparison to anybody else.
Did he say Houston's winning it all?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I
Houston is. Houston is winning it all.
From the studio. Wow, okay. I don't know if I agree with that one, but here's one thing I will agree with Kurt here, because of the defense wins championships, everyone knows. But Houston's the best perimeter shooting team in the Final Four. They shoot 40% from deep. They have LJ Cryer. They have Emmanuel Sharp, Crash. They have Milu Suzan. And they just shoot almost 50% from the field. Like that's something that is going to challenge this Duke team. They're going to have to crash the boards and close out. I think those 3 guys, Flagg, Proctor, and Knuppel, are just too much. I don't know.
I agree with you. I think Duke is the more talented team. But you mentioned that defense wins championships, and I dislike that saying because it's you have to play great defense and you have to have good enough offense to win championships. And I think this Houston team has that. I think their experience is going to shine through, especially when the lights are brightest. The Final Four is in San Antonio, so Houston has a little bit of that home field advantage.
Yep.
And I just don't think Duke has played a team as physical as Houston. And I think Duke has a tendency. Cooper Flagg early in the season has slipped multiple times in clutch moments, and I think that might cost them again. I think the lights will be too bright for this Duke team, and I have Houston winning. And so, quickly, just going around, who do you have winning the entire national championship? I think we've each mentioned our Final Four predictions, but who do you think's winning the national championship, Derek?
I mean, I'm going to have to agree with Nathan on this one, to be honest. I'm going to have to go Duke beating the Cougars and then also winning the championship.
Yeah, I'm going to be boring. And I'm just going to say the Blue Devils. Here's the thing. Also, this is important, too. In the Final Four, these 4 teams, everyone's like, it's boring or whatever. I disagree. I think this is amazing. It's just boring for brackets. But in terms of watching basketball, 4 1 seeds, I don't think it gets better than that. And this isn't a surprise. Like, these were the 4 best teams by a mile. On KenPom. Like, their efficiency was like almost 5 points better than the number 5 Vols. I'm sorry. But Thomas.
It's okay.
But
it's okay.
Yeah. But in the Final Four, these are top 10 KenPom teams ever. The 24-25 Duke, there's The top three are Duke teams, 98, 99, and then this year's Duke team, and then 2000. And then this Houston team is better than last year's UConn team. So, and UConn was like miles ahead of everyone. So this is, I mean, the field is just insane. I think this game is it's going to be the craziest game of the tournament. I think this will be crazier than the chip. I think the Duke-Houston game will be crazier than the chip, and I have Duke running away with it. I think this is going to be the hardest. I think, yeah, it's going to be the hardest game for Duke, and it's hard for me to bet against this Duke team.
Yeah, I grew up and my mom went to Kentucky, so I was ingrained with a hatred for Duke, and I just can't get past that. I respect Duke as a basketball team, but I have Houston beating Duke and then winning the national championship. I think this right here, this matchup, is the national championship, like you mentioned. Mm-hmm. And so that takes us into a broader conversation. You mentioned that this is historic in terms of it is all number one seeds, which hasn't happened since 2008. But these are historically great teams. These are all they've been a cut above the rest of the pack for pretty much the entire season. And I just want your thoughts on, is this a reflection of the college basketball landscape right now? Is it something we're just going to have to get used to? Is this just a blip, or is this a trend that is going to continue far beyond this season?
I don't know if it's necessarily easy to say one or the other, but like you said, this is the first time something like this has happened since 2008. So it's pretty simple to say this is probably a one in a decade kind of thing, maybe even more, for the one seeds to happen. I mean, it's pretty common to see in the tournament crazy like 10 seeds just going off and having runs, and like bottom seeds just having random runs of just like exciting basketball. So I would lean towards the side of this is something that's not going to happen every year. It's not going to see every year that the 4-1 seeds immediately just make it all the way. I think it's definitely something that might happen more often than it has been with how basketball is now, college basketball. But I don't think it's necessarily the 4-1 seeds are immediately just going to destroy everyone and get to the finals.
Yeah, I think everyone likes to talk about how boring this tournament has been so far just by the fact that it's all number one seeds in the tournament. We necessarily haven't had that Cinderella story that sort of the national media sort of attaches to. We haven't had a sister Jean with Loyola Chicago. The closest one we got was Amir or a Khan with McNeese State, but they lost in the round of 32. So it's unfortunate that we haven't had this Cinderella story. But the thing that people don't like to talk about is that the Final Four matchups haven't been great in these past couple of years with these Cinderella stories. We talk about an NC State, an 11 seed that made it last year to the Final Four. They lost by 13 to a talented Purdue team, but by no means like an invincible Purdue team. And then UConn beat Alabama by 14 in the other matchup last year in the Final Four. So I think we are going to see better basketball. I think we're going to see more competitive basketball in the Final Four. In the past couple of years, it's sort of felt like all the excitement was in the first weekend just because it's so chaotic with all these upsets. But now I think the end product is going to look a little bit better. Do you guys agree with the fact that this Final Four is better and going to be more enjoyable to watch than previous years?
Yeah, I think I'm all for this Final Four. I love upsets. I picked UC San Diego. I wanted like Lipscomb to win, but they weren't going to be Iowa State, like whatever. And I love New Mexico State making the elite. No, Sweet 16, right? New Mexico as a 10 seed. I love that. But with NIL and all these transfers and things like that, like the mid majors, it's just you have as a mid major, it's win now or never, because your players are going to go transfer. Like, do you get high school players? It's a whole different thing. Like St. John's is like, we're not even looking at high school players. So the landscape is just changing for college basketball, and everyone's transferring everywhere. And the teams are just so much better. Like the top seeds are getting better, and everyone's crying, and it's just like boo-hoo. Like basketball is getting better. It's like I don't understand the hate towards the one seeds. But I'm all for this Final Four. I think basketball, the college basketball, is going to completely change because of the transfer portal and the NIL. I think it's just trending upwards towards number ones getting better and mid-majors kind of getting worse. But I'm we go to Fordham and we're a mid-major, but as a fan of the tournament, I just don't see how you could hate towards such a. I mean, is it crazy to say like this is one of the best Final Fours maybe ever?
I completely agree.
It might be the most talented Final Four we've ever seen. I mean, definitely in my lifetime. So, I mean, as we said, these teams are in the top 10 efficiency of all time for college basketball. Like, that's insane to me. So, I think this is really good for college basketball. It hurts the mid-majors, but for the tournament, I love it.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. It's you obviously want the Cinderella stories. You want those random schools to just destroy and make it to the Final Four, but you want good basketball, and that's what this is. I mean, seeing the 4 1 seeds, it's basically what the 4 best teams playing against each other, and like you said, top 10 in efficiency, both teams just going at each other. I mean, it's great to see 2 amazing teams just going at each other, and that's what you want to see. That's what the tournament is for. That's what the tournament is to decide, to find the 2 best teams or the best 4 teams to have these matchups. That's what you want to see. So it's great for basketball to see such a talented Final Four and see these teams just going at it and just seeing these 4 1 seeds just playing.
Yeah, and it's by no surprise too. Like these were like runaway the best 4 teams. Like I'm usually kind of a low-key hater towards the committee, but I mean, how do you get the 1 seeds wrong here, right? Like these are far and away the best teams. I think Tennessee was kind of in that conversation. I'm just going to shout that out. I think they were in that conversation, but statistically, it's just like how do you not give them a 1? And they're showing it why. I mean, literally, the best teams from each region made it to the Final Four for a reason. And as we said before, I think this Duke-Houston game is going to be like the game. I think this is like what everyone should watch. So everyone should watch tonight.
I will just add one thing, just as a general kind of commentary thing. You guys got to remember, America loves the underdog. Like Loyola Chicago back in the day, all those teams are just like hard. Like that's what the United States likes. I don't know why it's always been the thing that they love the underdog, but that's just a thing in sports, in everything, that the underdog, everyone always roots for the underdog. So yeah, it kind of sucks that we're never going to probably ever see an underdog in the NCAA tournament, Final Four, and things like that ever again. At least in my opinion, I don't think we're ever going to see it ever again.
There's going to be no more like St. Peter's.
No, the world of NIL, those guys are not hidden anymore. Those guys can go and get paid anywhere. They'll go to a random school and get paid in a different way. Like, it doesn't matter. Those guys will never be in a group anymore where they can all be built where they're all low-key stars, because they can go anywhere and get paid NIL money, and they will never be just together like that again. So I believe that we'll never get the underdog again, and I think that it will suck, but it does, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, better basketball is better basketball.
What about Fordham, though? What about Fordham making the tourney? Come on, man.
No comment. We have a new coach at Fordham. I think that we can definitely make the tournament one day. Shout out to Chris Carino Sr. Talking to him at the Nets game the other day. He said the last time Fordham made the tournament in the 90s, he was the student broadcaster, and he said he wants one of us to be the student broadcaster for the next few years for it. So let's see if Fordham can do it. I mean, it's been a long time, so we need it.
Yeah, I think one of the good things about this transfer portal era is that rebuilds are accelerated in the sense that you can go out and with the right recruiter and the right vision, you can build a really talented team that could potentially make the tournament. You don't have the time to build up a program over 4 years. You've got to hit the ground running from day one. So we mentioned Fordham. I think it's going to be fascinating to see how the new head coach comes in and navigates this new college landscape. And I do agree that it's unfortunate that we're not going to see these magical Cinderella runs that end up making the Elite Eight, the Final Four. But I think at the end of the day, it's going to be a more polished, more competitive, and just an overall better sort of Final Four and a climax. In past years, the Cinderellas never really were considered to ever make a threat for the national championship. I believe it's 60% of national championships have been 1 seeds
Right.
in the past. So it's never been a conversation of the 11 seed or the 8 seed or some other seed was actually going to make a serious run at national championship.
It is fun to watch them like make the Sweet 16 or like an Elite 8 like that. Like remember like, well, maybe not remember, but like Davidson with Curry, like that's probably like the best, like most notable, I guess, like Cinderella run. And that really put Curry on the map. But like to see teams like St. Peter's and like Loyola Chicago, like these teams are like, you just, as Kurt said, like you just want to hold on to those teams. They're just so close to your heart and you just like want to cry and like just jump for joy for these teams. And it's just like, oh, when like Duke wins for like the 100th time, it's kind of boring. But I just think in terms of like watching quality basketball, the sport is trending in the right direction.
Yeah, I think it's unfortunate that we're not going to be able to see these underdogs play, but I think the Final Four, especially this year, is going to be really talented. It's going to be really competitive. And I was on the Storm the Court podcast yesterday, and we were talking about how you can still find underdogs in a sense to cheer for. We talk about Florida in Walter Clayton Jr. He was originally at Iona and then now transfers in. I think you are able to find players on the teams, even if they are the 1 seeds, you can find players on the teams to cheer for and to root for as people, as players. I recognize it's a little bit harder to do, and you've got to do a little bit more research as a casual fan. But I think those storylines are still there. Maybe they're not as sort of in your face as previous years, but I think those storylines are there. Now, after this break, we are going to transition to professional basketball. We're going to talk Knicks. We're going to talk general NBA, specifically the Cavs, the Celtics, the Jokic versus Shai Gilgeous-Alexander MVP race. And then we're going to talk about the playoffs in general as the final week of NBA basketball comes to a close. Don't go anywhere.
Hey, this is Chris Carino, Fordham and WFUV class of 1992. WFUV is your home for all things Fordham athletics, with live coverage of Fordham football, Fordham men's and women's basketball, in addition to our Saturday show, One-on-One. Stay right here on 90.7 FM for all things WFUV sports.
New York, public media from Fordham University, home of first listens and classic favorites. On air, online, or wherever you listen to radio.
Welcome back to One on One, New York's longest running radio call-in show. As I mentioned in the beginning of the show, we do have tickets to give away, and right now I'm going to give you the question to the Nets tickets. The first 2 callers to call in will get the Nets tickets. The first question is, the newest Brooklyn Net drew Timmy in his first 3 games combined for 39 points. Which Net holds the record for the most points in his first 3 games? Call 718-817-2750 if you think you know the answer. The first 2 callers to call in with the correct answer to our producer will score one of the pairs of tickets. The first gets the game on April 8th, and the second will get the game on April 10th. Good luck.
Ooh, I like that little jingle. That was good.
I know. I mean, the Nets don't have a lot working for them right now, but maybe you could score some tickets, catch a good game. And now, I mean, this is a pretty good segue. We're going to talk about the Knicks, and then we're just going to have a general chat about the NBA, and we'll first focus on the Knicks. They are 3rd in the Eastern Conference. They are 2.5 games up on the Pacers, which are in 4th place, but they are a long way behind the Celtics. They're 8.5 games behind, so they're right positioned about in that 3 seed. Potentially could fall down to the 4 seed if they have if they falter down the stretch. They're currently projected to play the Milwaukee Bucks, and a key storyline for the Knicks in the past couple of weeks has been the Jalen Brunson injury. He's potentially returning tonight. And the first question I have for you is, do the New York Knicks need to risk Brunson getting re-injured? Tom Thibodeau is famous for playing his starters on excessive minutes, 40-plus a game. And so my question is, do the Knicks need to have Jalen Brunson sort of shoulder a significant workload in order to solidify that 3 seed and play the Bucks? Or do they need, or can they just sort of slowly work him back into the fold? So overall, I think my answer to the question is that they've slowly got to work him back in. I think the Knicks, either way, I think they'd be better off being that 4 seed and playing the Pistons. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Knicks sort of handle the last couple of weeks of the regular season. Derek, we'll start to you. How does this Jalen Brunson sort of working back into the fold affects things in terms of seeding for the playoff race? And then how do you see the Knicks faring in the playoff race?
Well, first of all, I 100% agree with you with Jalen Brunson. I 100% agree that he needs to slowly work back in and recover officially. He needs to be 100% for the playoffs. And to be honest with you, the early seeding in the first round for the Knicks, I personally don't think it matters. I don't think it matters what they play the Bucks. I don't think it matters that they play the Pistons, because ultimately, whether you win there or you lose, you lose or you go home, or you win, you have to go play either the Celtics or the Cavs at some point. You need to play one or both of them at some point. So ultimately, I don't think it matters whether they're the 3 or the 4. I think it matters whether you have a healthy Jalen Brunson and a healthy Knicks team overall to be able to make a run and try and beat the powerhouses that are the Celtics and the Cavs. Because it doesn't matter, in my opinion, if Jalen Brunson's healthy for the rest of the regular season. If he's not healthy, to take out a powerhouse of the Celtics, take out a powerhouse of the Cavs that have been leading the East the entire season, that's what matters. What matters is taking them out to get to the finals, because you need to go through at least one of them.
Do you think the Knicks can do that? Do you think they can take out the top 2 seeds?
If they don't have a healthy Brunson, absolutely not. And even if they do have a healthy Brunson, it's going to be difficult. It's going to be difficult to take out a team that's so well-rounded like the Celtics, or a team that's so hot constantly throughout this whole season like the Cavaliers, that's also very, very well-rounded. They have very few gaps in their game. That's why they're 62-15, and that's why they lead the East over the Celtics. It's, even with a healthy Brunson, going to be extremely difficult if the Knicks want to make a run in this playoffs.
Yeah, I think I'm just going to say this on the airwaves. I'm going to say this. The Knicks will be eliminated. They are pretenders, and they are not contenders. I think in the East, the Celtics and the Cavs are so much further away from anyone in the conference that it doesn't even matter. I don't think the Knicks can even battle with those two teams. I think maybe they'll get past the first round. I think they'll make it. I think they'll make it past the first round without Brunson. If that's the case, I think he'll be back with that sprained right ankle. But the Knicks right now, they're sitting with on 500 winning percentage without Brunson, with 6 games to go or whatever it is. But still with Payne, McBride, and that rookie kind of out for the season. I don't like this Knicks team. They're just, the coaching situation top down is just not good. And also when all those injuries were coming in a couple weeks ago, Tibbs came out and he goes, "Oh, we have enough people, we have enough players." I'm like, you don't, man. Literally the roster is limited and it's very hard to win for you right now. You guys can barely beat the Wizards, and they can't beat the Hornets, and they can't beat the Spurs.
Don't get me started.
So I don't like this Knicks team. It says something about this roster that they can't beat the Hornets or the Spurs, and they can barely beat the Wizards. I mean, come on. So I think, Bridges literally said to the media and was like, you need to back off. The starters' minutes need to be backed off, and the bench should get more love. And I just don't think that's going to happen because we know how the Knicks play. But they're also 0-5 against the Cavs in the C's this season. So I don't see the win taking them all the way. Even I think they'll be swept by any team past the first round. I'm sorry.
I'm sure it's very frustrating as a Knicks fan. You reload in a pretty major way this past offseason. You spend, 5 first-round picks on Mikal Bridges. You acquire Karl Anthony Towns, and yet you've consistently this season been a step below the top 2 seeds in the East, and the Cavs and the Celtics. And you mentioned how they will not make it past the second round. They'll fall to likely the Celtics. I'm going to take it a step further. I don't think they beat a Bucks team. I don't think they beat a Pistons team because
in the first round.
Yeah, I just don't think they have. I don't think they have the bench to do it. We see we've seen that the teams that progressively make deep playoff runs have strong benches, and the Knicks just basically have no bench. And I think that's something they're just going to have to work on. I would have liked to see them make a couple trades before the trade deadline in an attempt to acquire some bench pieces, maybe trade away a starter and sacrifice a little bit of that starting 5 sort of attack in terms of just reloading the bench and making the Knicks roster deeper. But the Knicks, I fear if they go in a deep 6-game, 7-game series, I just don't think they have the stamina. You have to work Brunson back through injury. I don't think he's going to be at 100% by the time the playoffs roll around. And I think this Bucks team or even the Pistons team, I think they're talented enough and I think they're deep enough to cause this Knicks team some real trouble in the playoffs. And I think the Knicks just ultimately fall a little bit short. You can blame the coaching staff. You can blame the roster. It does not feel like a recipe for success for this Knicks team. And so now we're going to transition the conversation to who can actually win the Eastern Conference, because I think we're all pretty much in agreement that the Knicks will not be representing the Eastern Conference in the NBA Finals. And pretty much all season it's been a competition between the Cavs and the Celtics. The Cavs started 15-0 but have been incredible since 33-5 at home. Their away record has been a little bit shakier, but they're likely to have home court advantage for the entirety of the playoffs, at least until the NBA Finals. But then, of course, the Celtics are the reigning champs and deserve that respect. And so my question to you is, who is the team to beat in the Eastern Conference? Is it the Cavs, who have been incredibly hot and incredibly dominant throughout the season, or is it the Celtics, who are the reigning champs?
Yeah, it's got to be the Celtics. I have the Celtics going back-to-back here. I have them winning it all. It's just they broke the record for most threes in a season the other night with Proctor. I mean, not Proctor. Sorry.
Pritchard?
Yes. Yes, wow, blanking. But yes, the Celtics are just such a powerhouse. Every one of those 5 players that are playing at a time can hit a 3. Like Al Horford, if you give him the ball behind the arc, he's hitting that 3. I'm sorry. And so when you have a team that's so good beyond the arc like that, and each player can also defend every position on the court, and I just don't think the Cavs have that like ability or like capability to really like be lengthwise down the stretch as the Celtics are. I do think though that Evan Mobley is a mismatch monster. We saw it the other night against the Spurs. He just opened the night with 3 straight 3-pointers. He was doing dirty work in the paint and he got his 4th 3-pointer in the first quarter of the game. And so I think Evan Mobley is someone to watch out for on the Cavs. But I do think the Celtics are just running away with it in the East. It's just not going to be close.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I mean, well, I think it'll be maybe close, but I think the Celtics will definitely take it. I mean, this Cavs team has been, I mean, like you said, they've been dominant. They've been hot. But the Celtics have shown that they can do well in the playoffs, obviously. They won it all last year, so they've shown they have that experience of playoff winning, and they've also changed the game so much just through their 3-point shooting. I mean, like Nathan, like you said, that anyone on this team can shoot threes, and they've changed the game into half your shots have to be threes in order to win a basketball game by any margin. So they've changed the game so much, and they've shown that they can dominate in the playoffs and they can dominate in short series. So I definitely think that the Celtics team is at the very least going to make the finals.
Yeah,
Okay.
kind of boring to watch. The Celtics are, in my opinion, because it's just so many threes, and it's like let's just drive in and like let's get dirty. But I mean, whatever works for them. But I just think they're just so much better than every other team.
Okay, I'm gonna go with the Cavs just because I think going back to back is incredibly difficult in the NBA. I think the 2 last teams to go back to back were
Warriors.
the 2017-2018 Warriors and the Lakers in the late 2000s. But I think those teams were just so far and beyond better than everyone else that it really wasn't a question. But I think now with how competitive the top 2 teams are in the East and, of course, how loaded the Western Conference is, I think the Celtics have a little bit more of a gauntlet to go through compared to last year, and I think they have an ability to slip up. I recognize that they have the championship experience, but I think it's emotionally draining to go back-to-back, and I just don't think they do it. And you mentioned how the Celtics can be sort of boring to watch at times just because of the barrage of threes, and that's been a trend pretty much across the NBA, and this is more of a broader question about the state of NBA basketball. Do you consider this sort of 3-point revolution, in a sense, bad for the game of basketball? Do you think it needs to be changed, or is this simply just the way basketball is going to be played now?
Oh, it sucks. It sucks. It maybe doesn't suck for the game of basketball, but it sucks for viewership, in my opinion. It's boring to just turn on a game and you see drive down the court, shoot a 3, miss or make whatever. They drive down the court, they shoot another 3. They go to the other side, 3, 3, 3, back to back to back to back. It's just there's no physicality as much anymore. There's no driving in. There's no Kirk.
Derek, you couldn't be more wrong.
I couldn't be wrong.
Oh.
You couldn't be more wrong.
I love the chime-ins, by the way.
Sorry, yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
Kurt, please.
You couldn't be more wrong. The 3-point shot is the most exciting thing that can happen in a game. I apologize. Other than a poster dunk, a clutch 3 where you go insane.
A clutch 3.
But
a clutch 3
in general, threes in general are so much fun. Would you rather watch someone have? So I'll give you an example here. The Spurs, back when they were really good, they were really boring because they only took mid-range shots and layups. They weren't taking a lot of threes. People called them really boring because they were a lot more fundamental.
Okay.
So would you rather? Everyone would say now that if they're not taking a lot of threes, they're boring. The 3-point shot makes it more exciting. I don't care what anyone says. The 3 has revolutionized basketball. We're not getting rid of it. They have not had the 3. We've had the 3 in basketball since the ABA in the 70s. So what are you going to go back to? You're going to make it? You're going to push it back 2 feet
No.
People take even longer threes from mid-range and
Gotta make a
from
4-point line, man.
That's ridiculous. This is the most exciting era of basketball we've ever lived in. Everyone wants to complain about it for no reason.
I don't think you're right, and I think you're right with the Spurs.
When's it more exciting?
No, I think you're right with the Spurs that they were boring taking their mid-rangers and their layups. And I think there needs to be a mix of three-point shooting and layups.
But
I think it's too much of either thing, and there needs to be a mix of both.
How
I
do
think
you
it's too
implement that?
boring to focus on one part of the game. I think it's boring for half your shots to be threes and to focus on having just 3 after 3 after 3. And I think it's boring
That's
to be
exciting.
6'11" and shooting mid-rangers and layups the whole game.
But
I think
how do you
need
get
to
a mix?
have.
How do you get a mix of shots?
I
That's
don't
not
know.
How that works.
That's what you need, though. That's
I
what the
find
game
it-
of basketball
I find
needs.
it so much more exciting when a team goes into an in-transition 3, and it's even more fun when you watch basketball and that's going on. And why teams like the Celtics have been so good. People hate it because they don't want to watch how good other teams are at shooting the threes. There's just
Wait, so Kurt, what's your opinion on, because we see Jokic now. He's like, we can maybe talk about what we think Jokic is all time, but that's a conversation now of like top 10 of like he's in my top 10 now. But he is.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
he is. And I said that. But
He
the
did say
big man position is changing. And so what's your opinion on cuz like Shaq was just so you think about Kareem, the hook shot, you think about Hakeem, the footwork, Shaq, the power, but now it's like the big men are like, you have to be able to shoot beyond the arc, and that's like the game changing. So what's your opinion on that?
Seeing a 7-footer shoot threes is like the coolest thing on planet Earth. I apologize if I'm wrong about that, but these guys can shoot a 3 from anywhere, and they can also back you down into the lane and then dunk on top of you. Like, how is that not exciting? I'm just going to say, like, how is Jokic, who cannot be guarded by anyone anywhere on the court, now shooting a fadeaway 3 from anywhere on the court, not exciting? Just asking,
I agree
Derek,
with
how
you.
is that not
No,
exciting?
I think that is exciting, and I'm perfectly okay with you thinking
Are
that.
we now
exciting.
teaming up against
And-
Derek?
And
Yes,
I don't
yes,
enjoy that.
It seems like it at
The
the
hot
moment.
seat has switched.
I
think I'm
agree.
next, by the way.
Okay.
Thomas is really quiet.
I agree that Jokic shooting a 3 and them playing 23.9 seconds of perfect defense, and Jokic just shoots up a random shot. I love it. I love Jokic. I don't love when the entire team is focused on shooting threes.
But it's the most 3 is
No,
worth more than 2.
Kurt, let me finish. Kurt,
3 is worth more than 2.
Kurt, I need you to let me
worth
finish.
more than 2.
Kurt, I need you to let me finish.
I'm letting you finish.
I like when a team, I would like for a team to be able to have balance, and I'd like for a team to be able to shoot threes, but also be able to drive. I like maybe you start out shooting threes, maybe your 3-point shot isn't falling. You can adapt and change your game mid-game to change what you're struggling with.
You were
That's
against
what
the
I love.
Cavaliers, and that's what they do. They do adjust, and they do know how to drive.
I
They do
didn't
know
say
how
it was
to
against the
shoot.
Cavaliers. I said that they wouldn't win because current NBA is just shooting threes. Current NBA is a 3-point contest, driving down, not driving into the paint, not thinking layups, just shooting a 3, hoping you make it, shooting half your shots
It's
being
not
threes.
hoping that you make it. They know that they're going to make it, and it's just so cool watching that happen.
It's
I
not
don't
cool
know
watching
how-
the same
but
people
I
shoot threes
don't
over
know
and over
how
and over.
It's not the same people. Coming from a team that has been bad all season. I'm a Brooklyn Nets fan.
Kurt,
They have
I'm
been
a
bad-
Charlotte Hornets
Yes,
fan.
Yes, they've been bad all season. Jordy Fernandez's main goal all season was shoot as many threes as possible. And you know what? That has made me really excited when I get to watch Day'Ron Sharpe shoot a 3 and he's nails from 3.
You have 25
Guys,
wins.
But that's not my point. Getting to watch the threes go down as well as physicality on the other side of the ball and playing good defense. I find it good balance as well as, again, 3 is more than 2, and why wouldn't I take the points that are? Why wouldn't I take the shot that is more valuable and I am more likely to hit if I am a team that is really good from 3? That's how you win games, and
Kurt,
that's why it's fun
But
to watch.
This is all thanks to Kurt. Just say it. I know you want to say it. Who is it thanks to?
I'm not thanking Stephen Curry.
Yeah, and that hold on. I gotta grab something. For the people listening on the radio, I have to grab something right now.
This guy is a glazer of Stephen Curry.
I have sunglasses on. It's just hold on 1 second. For the radio, everyone watching, I have sunglasses on because it's just the future is we're in the Bronx, we're in the historic Rose Hill studio, and the future of the Warriors and the Western Conference is so bright, it's seeping
How do we
through
get
the
to
studio
Warriors?
right now. It's blinding. I can't even take my sunglasses off. And it's just Steph Curry, the last 4 days, scoring 52, 37, and 36 points in 3 wins. 125 points on 76 shots in 12 quarters. He already has 23 made threes in April. No other NBA player has more than 12, thanks to Athletic there. Shout out. The Warriors are on the come up, and that's all I have to say. I'm going to keep my sunglasses on for the rest of the segment.
Okay. All right. I see both sides of the argument. I think from a casual perspective, it is tough to watch nothing but threes. I remember I was watching the Celtics versus Cavs last playoffs, and it felt like for 5 minutes it was nothing but threes. And it's a tough watch. But I think if you are invested in the NBA, it's just the way that the game's going to go. I don't think the NBA is going to adjust anything. I think this is just the permanent state of the NBA. I think guys are too talented. I think people are taught to shoot threes from a very young age. I'm sure if I was 6'8", I would be taught to shoot threes when I was 5 years old. I think that's just the way the NBA is going right now. I think it's the way it's going to continue to be going. Obviously, I wish there was a little bit more diversity in terms of play styles, but in order to win, you have to be able to shoot threes, and you have to be able to shoot threes well and frequently. And I think that's just how it's going to be.
Yeah.
We're running out of time on this segment, but you mentioned Stephen Curry and his Golden State Warriors. They're currently matched up against the Nuggets, who are the 5 seed. And, of course, the Nuggets have Nikola Jokic, 2-time MVP, looking for his 3rd MVP. But people want Shai Gilgeous-Alexander to win.
Oh, no.
And it's tough. We can go stat by stat. Shai is the better scorer, arguably, but Nikola Jokic does everything else better. He's probably the most complete player in the game. So who do you think is going to win MVP, and who do you think should win MVP? Because I think those are 2 different questions with potentially 2 different answers.
It's going to be
Derek,
SGA.
who do you start with?
Yes, like you said, SGA is going to win, and I don't want SGA to win. I want Jokic, who, by the way, has 3 MVPs now. He's going for his 4th, and he should have his 4th because he does everything amazing. I mean, he's top 5 in basically everything at least. Sir SGA leads in scoring, but Jokic is right there, and then he also leads with rebound, or is close with rebounds at least. He's close with assists at least. He just had a 61-point triple-double. Sure, it's double overtime, but it's still a 61-point triple-double. You're not seeing that from literally any other player in the game right now. I mean, it's just I think Jokic should win MVP, not easily, because SGA is leading a very, very, very good Thunder team at the moment, and he's doing very well, and he's playing like an MVP, but Nikola Jokic exists. And that's my stance. I mean, like...
Yeah, I mean, I have my sunglasses on for a reason, and it's because the Western Conference is just so bright. It's, like, literally blinding me right now. Because SGA
All right, buddy. Calm down.
leads the league. SGA leads the league in 50, 40, 30,
No, SGA,
and 20-point games.
SGA is awesome. Don't get me
Yeah,
wrong.
but he's going to win because they're the one seed.
He's not gonna win.
No, he is.
There's a reason why Nikola Jokic is just the most valuable player. Period. That's just how this works. It doesn't work like that, but it really should. That Nikola Jokic is the greatest player right now that touches a basketball.
Right, but
100%.
there's a difference between
If
who's
you
going to win the MVP.
If you put Nikola Jokic on any basketball team, he is the most valuable player,
Yes.
period. And he should be the most valuable player now. I don't care what voters say. I don't care what anyone says. Nikola Jokic is the most valuable player to his team. He's the most valuable player to the NBA. It doesn't make a difference. No one drops 60-point triple-doubles and is not the most valuable player in the NBA.
Thank you,
he's
Kurt.
in the West, and it doesn't make a difference. SGA is wonderful and awesome. 2 free throws for Shai. It doesn't make a difference. Nikola Jokic should be the MVP.
Thank you, Kurt.
I think Jokic should be the MVP because I agree with you. He's the most valuable player to a team, to any team. But the MVP race for the NBA is oftentimes not really the most valuable one. It's probably the best player on the best team. So I don't think it's going to go it's neck and neck between SGA, but I just think because his team is just like record-wise better, and it's probably one of the best OKC teams like the league's ever seen. I think it's just going to go to SGA. That's just how it happens.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think Jokic should win the thing, and the argument that SGA should win simply because he's the best player on the best team, I think, is a faulty argument. Because then why isn't Donovan Mitchell in conversation with why isn't Donovan Mitchell in conversation for the MVP? He's not. And I think in terms of record, the Thunder and Nuggets, I get the Nuggets are 17.5 games back, but it's not like the Nuggets are 13th in the West and
Right,
struggling
right
to make
there,
They're up there, and they're going to be in contention to make a deep run in the playoffs. And Jokic is easily the most valuable player on that Nuggets team, and in the entire NBA, no one plays the game like he does. We talked about how the style of play in the NBA, in terms of the modern game, can be frustrating to watch with just a barrage of frees frequently. But at the end of the day, the Jokic is fun to watch. I think no one plays the game of basketball like he does, and that's whom I vote. I think Jokic will win, but voter fatigue is real, and I think Shea is going to win, unfortunately, even though Jokic does deserve that. And we can argue about where does Jokic rank all time, but that's a conversation for another day. When we come back, we're going to transition from the hard court to the diamond. We're going to talk Yankees. We're going to talk Torpedo Bat Mania, and if Aaron Judge is going to break the home run record. He's on pace for 137 home runs. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Hey sports fans, it's Bobby C. I'm the sports director here at WFUV. From live broadcasts of Fordham Athletics to coverage of all the professional sports teams in the NYC, we've got everything a sports fan could ask for. Like talking sports? Check out One on One, New York's longest-running sports call-in show, as well as our diverse collection of podcasts. If you're a Fordham student interested in joining our program, feel free to shoot me an email, bobbyc@wfuv.org. And as always, thank you to all of our listeners who support us every week. 90.7 FM is the home of WFUV Sports.
Welcome back to One on One, New York's longest-running sports call-in show. I'm Derek Beaulieu, joined by Thomas Tisdale and Nathan Rogers. But before we get into the Yankees and everything to do with Torpedo Bats, Aaron Judge, and everything else baseball, let's give away some tickets. Aaron Judge homered yesterday, and that is the 321st home run of his career in 1,000 games. Which Yankee legend also had 321 home runs in his first 1,000 games with the Yankees? Call 718-817-2750 to give your answer to our wonderful producer, Kurt Sipple. Again, 718-817-2750. And we hear that wonderful jingle once again. But now we can finally get into some Yankees baseball. And we're going to obviously start with the big thing that everyone's been talking about for weeks, torpedo bats. And I'm sure everyone has heard at least something about torpedo bats at some point, and just everywhere on Instagram, everywhere on TikTok, everywhere on social media. But essentially, torpedo bats have moved some of the wood from the baseball bat that really wasn't being used probably near, or mostly near the top of the bat, and moved it down into the barrel and moved the barrel a little bit. But the notable players using it on the Yankees are players like Anthony Volpe, players like Jazz Chisholm, players like Paul Goldschmidt, Cody Bellinger, Austin Wells. But there's a lot of players outside the Yankees using it as well. Francisco Lindor of the Mets, Ellie De La Cruz of the Reds, who's done really well with the torpedo bat. And I kind of want to just get you guys' thoughts on the torpedo bat. Do you like it? It's obviously legal if you read the rules of baseball. It's obviously legal, but do you like it for the game of baseball?
I think it's good. I think for far too long, pitchers have had access to technology. Obviously, they're banned from using sticky stuff, but I think they've had access to unique technology in a way that has created almost a disadvantage for hitters. And I think this is the first time that we've seen hitters sort of develop technology that sort of fights back against the pitching, and it's going to make the game more exciting. I think the Torpedo Bats are a unique invention. The guy from MIT obviously spent a lot of time developing that, and it's not like you can just go to your local Dick's Sporting Goods and buy a Torpedo Bat. They are specifically made based on where you hit the ball. I think Jazz and Volpe, or Volpedo as we like to call him now, developed the Torpedo Bats in a way that prevented them from being jammed. And so the Torpedo Bat is just a new way, and it's taking advantage of technology, of new technology that we have to make our hitters a little bit better at the game. Some people like to say it's cheating and that the hitters should just go back to using regular old hickory back in the 1930s or whenever the last time we used hickory was. But I think this is good for the sport of baseball. It's going to make games more exciting. More home runs is usually always good for the sport. And I think just because of the success of the Yankees so far has drawn attention to the Torpedo Bats. I think if we talk about the first two games of the Arizona series, they did not necessarily hit the ball particularly well. So if that was the opening series, then maybe we're not having this conversation at all. I think just because of the record-breaking day, we're having a conversation about the Torpedo Bats. So that's my take on it. I think Torpedo Bats are good for the sport of baseball, more exciting to watch, especially for the casual fan.
I think more than anything with the Torpedo Bats is that the MLB has zero idea how to market itself, and that this has been going on for the last 3 years. And the best example I heard about it was during the Michael Kay show. Actually, now it's Don Hahn Rosenberg. They were talking about it, and they said when hockey introduced the composite sticks, they weren't like made out of a block of wood anymore. They released a press release. They said, "Hey guys, everyone can use these sticks now. They're legal completely, and everyone should use them because they're going to create more offense for our sport." MLB instead hit it. They had the Yankees go on air and talk about the Torpedo Bats, so they broadcasted it to the world, and then everyone was pissed about it because no one knew about the Torpedo Bats in time, and the MLB should have been marketing these as we have new technology that's going to create more offense in our sport, and it's going to be 15 to 15 games that maybe some people aren't going to enjoy, but more home runs are better for the sport, and it's more fun for the sport.
Yes, Kurt.
I think they
agree.
hit it on purpose, though, because I don't think if they came out in a press release...
That's ridiculous to hide things on purpose.
No, but I think if they came out in a press release and they talked about the Torpedo Bats and how they're going to revolutionize the sport, I don't think there's as much chatter about them. I think that people invested in MLB will obviously pay attention and would be excited about that. But I think the people who are sort of half tuned into the MLB, just because of the explosion and sort of the drama surrounding the Torpedo Bats, I think generated more excitement and has MLB in a good place in terms of viewership, and then, of course, the offensive revolution that's going to happen because of the Torpedo Bats.
Yeah, I think this is awesome for the MLB, but I do agree with Kurt that the MLB is not really using it to their advantage that they could, like, to the maximum, you know? Like, they could really market this to really attract more viewership, but I think just for talking just baseball, quality of baseball, it's just so fun to watch. I mean... The thing that people just don't like is just because the Yankees hired some MIT nerd.
No, it's it's not even that. It's just that it's the Yankees.
Yeah, it's 100%. Literally just the Yankees. But other teams are using it too. But they basically kind of started the trend, right? And I think for sports now, I think the key is just push the envelope, evolve, change, and keep going up. Like we talked about college basketball, the one seeds are getting better, mid majors are changing, baseball, it's just changing. And also the tush push. I just love when teams find something within the rules. This is legal, people. This is legal. The Torpedo Bat, and it's within the rules. And it's so Belichick, by the way, of the Yankees. This is very Belichick of the Yankees to do this. And it hurts me to say that I love something from the Yankees, but I love this.
Oh, 100%. And as Kurt mentioned, this is not like a new thing. This is not a new thing. Giancarlo Stanton specifically is probably the best example of this. He's out right now, obviously, with his elbows being hurt, but he used it the entirety of last postseason. And we all know, especially in this studio, exactly what Giancarlo Stanton did during the playoffs. I mean, he won ALCS MVP for a reason, and it's just this isn't a new thing that people are seeing, but it's new to a lot of fans now. And I kind of wanted to go into why exactly torpedo bats are doing what they're doing and why they're so effective. And it mostly has to do with players that were getting jammed and now they're not anymore because of how the barrel has changed. Players like Aaron Judge, who use the barrel to their advantage already, don't need this, but players like Anthony Volpe, Jazz Chisholm, and Ellie De La Cruz, who I'm going to go into, do. But Ellie De La Cruz maybe doesn't need it as much, but he's using it to his advantage. Volpe last year had a barrel percentage of 3.9%. So that means 3.9% of the balls he hit on the barrel. This year so far, it's up to 19%. That is an insane increase to his barrel percentage because he's not getting jammed as much, and he's using the barrel. Jazz Chisholm, 9.7%, pretty good. Up to 29.4%. That's insane. Ellie De La Cruz, 12.7, elite. That's an elite number. 20.8 now this year so far. I mean, it's revolutionized baseball hitting so far. It's good to see technology now getting introduced for hitters rather than pitchers. I mean, pitching mechanics has changed so much over the years. Even the past 5 years, pitching mechanics has changed heavily. I mean, the sweeper wasn't even a pitch 4 years ago. It's now one of the best pitches in MLB. The baseball bat has not changed its shape. Maybe it's the wood type they're using or the material. The shape of the baseball bat has not changed in at least a century. I mean, it hasn't changed at all.
You have to think, though, like, with the bat changing so much, like with the Yankees, because you have Volpe, Wells, Jazz, Bellinger, Goldschmidt, like they're all using it, right? And the people that were kind of suffering a little bit at the plate, now they're just hitting dingers, right? Like I sat down first inning on the game on Thursday, 4 runs in the first inning. That's like that's unheard of. But it begs the question though. I'm wondering, like, because the batters are using new technology, like how do the pitchers adapt to this? Like if you're a pitcher, what do you do to like adapt to these torpedoes?
I think it's gonna be tough to see, and I dislike the argument that it's rewarding bad hitters for it's rewarding their tendencies and their bad tendencies. But the thing is that the torpedo bat is not teaching you how to hit the ball.
No,
and I caution against that sort of being an generalized statement, because then you can get into the argument that Barry Bonds should be in the Hall of Fame because steroids don't teach you how to hit a ball. But the thing is that the Yankees are using analytics to their advantage, and I think it's exciting to watch. And I honestly have no idea how the pitchers adapt to this. I think it's going to be difficult. I think they're going to have to go back to statistics and find out where are the batters vulnerable, because at the end of the day, the batters have a weakness at some spot.
Yeah, I guess you just throw lower, try to get some more ground balls, because once I feel like once the ball hits the barrel on a torpedo bat, like on a bat,
it's a nuke.
Yeah, it's just out, and it's just seeds every time. They're just finding the hole in the outfield, and it's a frenzy. By the way, the Yankees are on a frenzy.
Oh yeah. But even though like you're using a torpedo bat and maybe it is a little better than a normal bat, it's like we've been saying, it's the missileer, not the missile. Like the players still have weakness. They have weaknesses. You can still throw them a high fastball. If they can't get any barrel to the ball, they're not going to hit it anyway. It doesn't matter how big the barrel is on the torpedo bat, even if it's within MLB standards, by the way.
Hitting a baseball is the hardest thing in sports.
Oh,
and
easily.
That's so true.
Easily.
And
players bat 300 is elite.
Yeah.
That's for a reason.
I just watched, I'm gonna like put an analogy out there. I just watched Harry Potter, and it's like it's going to make sense. It's going to make sense. It's the one who wields the wand and not the wand.
Okay, but I'd like to extend this Harry Potter metaphor here.
Right.
And
let's stick here.
The sport of Quidditch, aren't the players
love this.
that have the best brooms, like the Firebolt, for example?
Yes.
For our listeners who are not in tuned with the Harry Potter universe, that is the best broom. It's the fastest broom. It's the one that can turn the quickest. Is that not inherently a disadvantage because the players with the Quidditch players with the best brooms just immediately have an advantage, and it's unfair for the sport for the people that can't afford.
I love we're talking about
torpedo
Quidditch right now.
bats.
I love this. No, but I also think I'm just gonna also extend this metaphor even more. We're gonna go like a part 3 here. It's a trilogy, and I'm just gonna say like in those Quidditch games, there's times where like sorcery and magic has been used to bail out people without the best equipment. So I will say it's the knowledge, it's the skill, it's if you can hit the ball with the bat, you're better off. And it's just it's the one who wields the wand and not the wand.
To sum all of this up, the Yankees are really good at baseball.
Yes.
Let's just go with that.
And everyone
speaking
should watch
of
every game.
Yes, exactly. Everyone should watch every Yankee game because someone doing something historic, who's always doing something historic, it's Aaron Judge. I mean, he's played 7 games this season so far, and he has 6 home runs already. He had a 3 home run game in that historic 9 home run game with the Yankees on Saturday, last week exactly. But, I mean, he's been electric. He's batting over 400. His OPS is over 1,600. He's putting on historic numbers, which we haven't seen. And last year, he put on historic numbers again from his 2022 season when he broke the home run record in the AL. But last year, as we noticed, people were worried about Aaron Judge. For the first 25, 30 games, he was struggling. All of April, he was struggling. But he put up amazing numbers, 320-ish batting average, 58 home runs, so many RBIs. But this season, he's starting off in April, hot, electric, and amazing. And what do we think this means for his home run record, his other records? A season that might be better than already the best right-handed season of all time. Ooh. What do we think this means for the future
dingers?
Of Aaron Judge?
60 dingers, maybe.
60 dingers again?
Yeah.
I think so, because you mentioned last season and the slow start, but then there was also a period in late August, maybe early September, where he also struggled, and then he broke out of that slump with the grand slam against the Red Sox.
Love it.
And
Love talking about the Red Sox.
And so Aaron Judge is undoubtedly going to have stretches over the season where, he's not hitting 6 home runs in 7 games. Like, obviously, this is not sustainable
it's Aaron Judge.
Over a 162-game season. The thing that scares me the most about Aaron Judge not making or not breaking the record is that the protection behind him can be questionable at times. If whoever's behind him, if it's Goldschmidt, if it's Volpe,
you don't like 100-year-old Paul Goldschmidt behind Aaron Judge?
He's not 100, Kurt.
Sorry, he's 107.
Kurt, I need you to stop interrupting our segment. We're having a great segment, and I kind of need you to back off a little bit.
Yeah, the Mets will come later.
We'll talk about the Mets later. You can talk about Pete Alonso. Is that okay? Thank you, Kurt.
I might
Go
keep
ahead,
on
Thomas.
the mic.
Anyway, I think Goldschmidt, the protection behind Aaron Judge could be called into question sometimes, where who's gonna if the guy behind him isn't batting particularly well, you just walk Judge, and I think that's a pretty easy decision for teams to make. I think the Blue Jays did it quite frequently last season.
It's already happened so far this season. He already has one.
It's already happened. I think it could continue to happen if Soto was still on the team. Sorry to say,
it almost Thomas. I didn't want to interrupt you there, but it's almost like there's a gap without Juan Soto.
It's almost like Jazz Chisholm behind him is 4 home runs.
Yeah, because Jazz.
It's almost like Austin Wells is batting him.
Because Jazz Chisholm is Juan Soto.
I didn't say Jazz Chisholm was Juan Soto. I said Jazz Chisholm is batting amazing. That's what I said.
But anyway, to go against this Juan Soto narrative, Juan Soto batted in front of Aaron Judge last year.
I'm just saying that's backup because it was hard to decide who you wanted to walk. Juan Soto would get on base, and then you would have a more powerful lineup.
Didn't Juan Soto strike out to end the game against the Astros?
Doesn't matter.
Thank you, Kurt. Go ahead, Thomas.
Anyway,
the Soto shuffle?
I think the Yankees have enough talent that they can have a rotating cast behind Aaron Judge and offer him at least a little bit of protection. I think Aaron Judge will be intentionally walked at a higher rate than he was last year. But my question to y'all is, how many home runs does Aaron Judge need at the break, at the All-Star break?
The All-Star break.
To, in theory, break the home run record. I'm not talking about American League.
You're talking about 73
I'm
Barry Bonds?
talking about 73
Oh,
Barry
wow.
Bonds.
I think. Okay, so the All-Star break isn't exactly halfway. It's about 90, 100 games into
Yeah.
the season. So if we're given a number, 45, 50?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right?
Okay. I don't.
To be comfortable.
I think
okay.
yeah.
Comfortable. Okay. that's fair.
Realistically, 45 probably, because then you can hit the other 30 in the rest of the 60 games. I think 45, 50 is the number to be comfortable with him
Yeah.
saying he might do this. If he's at 40, he still has the chance, obviously, if he goes red hot like he is right now. But
He loves the second half of the season though.
he does.
So
He loves
I
the
think
whole season except April, which
Yes.
right now he's loving April.
Yeah.
And then obviously hates October.
Okay, we
but-
didn't have to say that. I
Alright.
was going to ignore
But
that
talking
part.
about Babe Ruth, though, the most home runs in the first 1,000 games with the Yankees, 321 Babe Ruth, 321 Aaron Judge.
And that was our trivia question earlier, which someone did get correctly, and they did win those those Yankee tickets.
Congratulations to that lucky listener. But anyway,
It was Henry Wolf, by the way. So.
big Henry Wolf guy.
Thank you.
Anyway, shout out to Henry. Anyway, but we talk about Aaron Judge and his place in the Yankee history books. Obviously, he ties Babe Ruth with that record. Where does he rank all time in terms of Yankees? Does he need a championship? Because obviously, the postseason struggles are real. But the ring is a team game. Kurt is behind the glass pointing at his ring finger. But I think that in terms of championship, I don't think you can necessarily fault Aaron Judge for the championship. I don't think
I have a rebuttal on that. I think if Aaron Judge was on any team other than the New York Yankees, 100% yes. But he's on the 27-ring New York Yankees. If you don't have a ring on the New York Yankees, you're automatically seen as below anyone who has multiple. So that is one problem I have with that. I do think that the New York Yankees, if you're going to be on an all-time list, you do need a ring. And I do think Judge needs a ring to submit himself in any all-time list. But he obviously needs to get there, and he, as we said a little bit earlier, does need to play well in October. But we'll have to see how he does that this year. But I do think if we're going to talk about Aaron Judge on an all-time list, he needs a ring.
Can I just say one thing? So Don Mattingly is below any other Yankee ever before him because he doesn't have a ring?
I didn't say any Yankee. I said most Yankees who have multiple
just
rings.
Gonna say he doesn't have any. So
okay, well you know
does it mean that he's just a bum because he has no rings?
I never said he
rings. I know it's all that matters in Yankee land.
Okay,
but I'm just saying.
Okay, thank you, Kurt.
Just asking. Does that mean that he's not as good?
Kurt, can I continue my?
But I'm asking you a question.
You know what? No.
Doesn't.
No.
So
it
Aaron
doesn't
Judge,
hurt
so
him.
Aaron Judge could be retired as a great power hitter, everything, maybe broke Barry Bonds' home run record, all that. Will Yankee fans look down upon him if he does not get them a ring?
I think more than if he had a ring. I think he will be looked down on a little bit if he doesn't have a ring.
Yankee fans will look down upon him a lot if he
yes,
doesn't get rings.
Especially if he continues to not play well in October. But anyway, moving on from Aaron Judge, I have just one small question before we end off this segment and go into Mets territory in Queens. With the Yankees hitting so many home runs in their first 7 games, they have, I believe, 22 so far, unless they hit more that I'm unaware of, which would not be surprised, which is the most in the first few games of the season, of any season. Are the Yankees too reliant on the home run? Are they too home run heavy that if maybe the long ball doesn't get out, will they struggle to score?
The advantage of Yankee Stadium is that if you hit the ball high and relatively far, it's probably going to be a home run. And so I don't like the notion that the Yankees are over-reliant on the home run ball. I think that they're using the stadium to their advantage. I'm thinking back to the Pirates game from last night where they only hit 1 home run or something like that, but the rest of the runs came through, I guess, small ball or fundamental baseball. And I think the New Yorks are good enough in terms of contact and power that they have a diverse enough offensive lineup that they're not over-reliant on the home run ball. I think they're utilizing the short porch to their advantage, and obviously they're going to hit a lot of home runs, but the contact is good enough that I think that they can play small ball when they need to.
Also, the Yankees are second in the MLB in extra base hits. So, I don't know if I would say they're relying on the dingers and going yard all the time. But when you're hitting the ball so well, it's like just keep going. Just keep going.
Yeah, I can 100% agree with that. And if the Yankees continue to play how they are, it doesn't matter if they're home run heavy. If they can continue to hit home runs, it's going to win them games. So I think that's going to do it for our Yankee session. But after the break, we're going to go into Mets, maybe talk about Pete Alonso a little bit. Maybe they're pitching. But we'll see you after the break. Don't go anywhere.
You're listening to WFUV, New York.
I promised you all Mets, but before we go over to Queens, here's the latest with the IndyCar Series with Bobby Chaffardini.
Indy in 60. Alex Palou is making all the right moves as he seeks to win the IndyCar Championship for a third straight season. Palou opened 2025 with wins on the street course at St. Petersburg and followed that up with a victory on the thermal road course.
So many stuff that needs to go right in order to win an IndyCar, or tire mileage and also fuel mileage. Like, there's so much stuff that needs to go right that it's tough to get it, and it's amazing to start with a double win this season. So yeah, super happy.
Palou takes a 39-point lead into the streets of Long Beach next weekend for the Acura Grand Prix. Tune in at 4:30 p.m. Sunday on Fox Sports. Indy in 60.
So now that we finished up with the IndyCar series, we're going to go into a little bit of Mets baseball. Now that we covered the Yankees, go over to Queens. And the Mets not making history like the Yankees have, but they're certainly not playing badly. And especially one player on the Mets so far playing very well is Pete Alonso. What do we think about Pete?
Obviously, he's been pretty good. And during free agency, when Pete and his agent Scott Boras was having a conversation with the Mets, and it seemed like Pete Alonso was not going to come back to the Mets. And Mets fans were coping with that, where they were saying, oh, we got Juan Soto, we have Francisco Lindor, we really don't need anyone else. But what I've seen from the first few games in the season is that Pete is an incredibly integral part of this offense. He's leading in batting average, he's leading in home runs, RBIs, on-base percentage. He's basically doing it all. And there were undoubtedly going to be sort of growing pains when it came to inserting Juan Soto in the lineup and playing at Citi Field. But Pete Alonso, in the meantime, has carried this Mets offense. Maybe the Mets haven't started nearly as hot as they would like to in an absolutely loaded National League, but they've been really good. I like what Pete Alonso's done. He's absolutely raking the ball, even without the torpedo bat. He's been fantastic this year. As much as I hate to say it, Pete Alonso's been pretty great this year so far.
Yeah, and he had a really big grand slam against the Marlins in one of their games that the Mets ended up taking, where it seemed like Pete before that wasn't necessarily getting the fame as he was playing super well, but after the grand slam, it seemed like kind of like decisions on Pete changed a lot, and people are now recognizing kind of that he's playing a lot better than maybe he was projected to be, and he's playing better than most of his teammates. I mean, Juan Soto is definitely playing well, but he's not playing like he necessarily did last year. It might be due to a slow start. But one player that seems to be struggling quite a bit and tends to struggle early in the season is known torpedo bat user Francisco Lindor, and he's not been playing as well as the Mets fans would have liked to him.
No, this is expected.
It's expected?
Yeah, it's expected that Francisco Lindor always has a very shoddy April.
Well, it's expected, but it's
And
not
then he
necessarily
breaks out.
wanted.
No, you don't want Francisco Lindor to have a bad April.
Well, of
That's
course.
just not something that you wish. No one's wishing for that. But it's kind of the expectation at this point. It's how he started his career. It's how he's been doing with the Mets, at least for a long time. He did it last year as well, and people were questioning, almost like Aaron Judge, what is going on? When is he going to break out? And then he had one of the best seasons of his career, and he finished second in MVP voting. So I'm not completely worried about Francisco Lindor. There's not much worry, just in general. And I think that he's still going to break out, and this Mets team is still really good. Their offense has just started now finally clicking. I mean, they played the Blue Jays. They played really well. Needing 11 innings to beat the Marlins is never great, but also still played good baseball at the end. I think their biggest problem is that their pitching is leaving so much to be desired.
You don't like their pitching?
Oh, not at all.
No? You don't like Clay Holmes being your opening day starter?
I'm okay with Clay Holmes being the starter.
You're okay with Clay Holmes being your starter?
He played okay. He didn't play bad. I don't think that Clay Holmes had a very bad start. I don't think it was Clay Holmes' fault that the Mets did poorly. I think it was the rest of the team why the Mets did poorly. You cannot combine for one hit and the one hit be Juan Soto and then expect to win the baseball game. That's not Clay Holmes' fault. Offense has to come from both ways, not just one way.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, but Clay Holmes being an opening day starter for the Mets was not on my bingo card whatsoever, but I hate to say it, he's not playing badly. I mean, so far in 2 starts, 9.1 innings with a 2.89 ERA, 10 strikeouts, 6 walks, which 6 walks isn't necessarily a ton of walks, but it's not something you'd like to see so many of. But he's certainly filling his role that the Mets need him to, because the pitching for the Mets is mainly their big issue. I mean, they had quite a few starters to open up in spring training, but then you see a lot of injuries. You see Frankie Montas gets injured. You see Sean Manaea gets injured. I believe Kodai Senga is injured at the moment. You see a lot of injuries for the Mets. How do you think they recover from these injuries, and what do they do about their pitching to make themselves viable in this NL East?
It's really about weathering the storm, I would say. It's just like, yeah, obviously the injuries are a bit of an issue with Sean Manaea and Frankie Montas. Like, obviously, it's going to be tough to start the season. And once those guys get back healthy again, it's going to be about working them back in a smart, sort of calculated way. Obviously, it's unfortunate that they've had to deal with these injuries, especially early in the season. But I think the Mets are still in a good place going forward. It's just it's going to be a tough opening month and a tough April to battle through, and it's going to be interesting to see the sort of the resilience of this team and if they can sort of persevere throughout this what's going to be a really tough April to go through and get wins, and hopefully they won't fall too far behind in terms of the division race and also the wild card.
Yeah, and as we talked Francisco Lindor and his Torpedo Bat, we actually have a caller. Andres from Oakland wants to talk about the Torpedo Bats, and what do we think, Andres, about these Torpedo Bats?
I think the Torpedo Bats, I think that they kind of ruin the classic nature of baseball.
Really?
I think that there's a part of, okay, you hit the sweet spot of a bat, it should be a hit. If you don't, it shouldn't be. And I think for a guy like Anthony Volpe, he just sucks.
You think
that he shouldn't have to? He shouldn't change where he is.
So, okay, so
also hi, Durs.
Hey,
so
what's up, Roger?
So you're saying if you hit the sweet spot, it should be a hit, and if you don't, then it shouldn't be. So what do you think about random bloop singles where you get jammed but you get lucky? What do you think about that? Is that a bad thing about baseball?
I was simplifying my argument, of course, but I'm just saying that you're changing how the game is played. Baseball is America's pastime, and I think you have gloves. You have bats if that's what it is. It's different than a sport. Like I would say even golf. Golf's a classic sport too, but that sort of technology should be always changing. I don't think it should be for baseball.
Why don't you think baseball should be applied, or technology should be applied to baseball? I mean, specifically with batters. I mean, pitching, I don't know if you have a problem with all the pitching, new mechanics, new technology that's been added for pitchers in ways where they can analyze hitters and get them out more efficiently. Do you have a problem with technology being used there?
No, I don't know. It's a tough argument. I get it. But I mean, the Yankees having, what did they have, like 11 homers in those 2 games or whatever it was? Like, I think that's silly.
But there was, I mean, the Yankees didn't even break the record for most home runs in a game. I believe it's 10 by the Blue Jays back when they were very good in those in the 1900s. So they didn't have torpedo bats at the time. So what's the problem with so many home runs in so few games? If there's no torpedoes,
it feels like a bit of a projection, and that you're upset that the Yankees have implemented this new technology and are going to be ahead of the game and are going to be probably the best in the AL this year, and it just feels like you're compensating for your team being bad.
The Sacramento A's will implement the torpedoes and we'll be fine.
Yeah, I get that. It's not like
the Sacramento A's can't afford the torpedo bats.
Like that. I think Judge is good. I think Anthony Volpe's not.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
Anthony...
Don't disrespect Volpe like that.
No. Anthony Volpe won a Gold Glove for a reason. He's a very good player, and he's been making adjustments to his swing, and this torpedo bat has just helped him advance his progression. So I personally, obviously, as a Yankee fan, don't see a problem with it, but I see you have a problem with the torpedo.
Yes, problem with it, and I don't like the Yankees.
There it is.
I love Nathan Rogers, though. And I hope you guys yesterday. I just call in and say that the Yankees suck and the Bats suck.
Love you, Durs. We'll talk later.
There we go. Love you too. All right, have a good one.
Yeah.
Very interesting call from your friend Nathan. How do you feel about that conversation?
New York airwaves, man, they're different. They're different out here. Okay, so callers from California, shout out from the West Coast. That's why my sunglasses are on. But yeah,
I think we also have another caller from LA, Nick.
We do.
How's it going, guys?
How's it going, Nick?
What's up?
That was one of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard. Torpedo bats are totally fine and even good for the game.
Yes.
And I think I'm not sure which one of you made the point that pitchers have been adopting new technology for years, why haven't hitters been able to? And I think that's a really good point. Also, he's bagged on the Yankees for using it. Does he realize Francisco Lindor also used a torpedo bat last year?
I don't think that he had. I don't think he made that.
Okay, well, that's a connection to make there. And it's not like they're corking the bats, right? Like, the bat is no lighter it is. It's just a weight redistribution.
Nick,
And
go ahead.
You know, no, I don't see any issue with these bats. There are players who it's working for. Fine, you want to make the case Anthony Volpe, all of his home runs are unicorns, as they say. That's fine. How about the players who ditch them as soon as they use them because they didn't work for them? How about Aaron Judge ditching the torpedo bat? How about Max Muncy using it for 2 at-bats and then ditching it there? I mean, there are players that it works for and players that it doesn't. But the point is that this is just new hitters technology the pitchers are going to have to adapt to, and that's how the game should work. It should be pitchers get a new technology, hitters adapt. Hitters get a new technology, pitchers adapt. I think this is fantastic for the game, and I think it's up to the user whether they want to decide to use it because it works for some and doesn't work for others. So ridiculous calling it torpedo bats cheating. I think that's an uninformed opinion and holds no weight.
Callers from California. I love this, by the way. I love it.
I think that's a fantastic point, and I think the reason why people are against the torpedo bats is because it's Yankees. And I know Nick has had a bit of a conflict in choosing between the Yankees and the Dodgers, and so I just want to hear on air, just so everyone knows, would you like to see the Dodgers implement the torpedo bats, or are you just who are you cheering for exactly in this thing? Are you a Yankees fan or are you a Dodgers fan?
Sure. So there's been a lot of confusion, and I'd like to clear the air on air, and thank you for letting me do that. I'm from Los Angeles. I'm a Dodgers fan. I've spent a lot of summers here in New York, so I appreciate New York Yankees baseball very much. To the point where I'm probably even a bigger Yankees fan than most people in New York City. But that said, it's always been the Dodgers for me. So I'm glad I could clear that up. But that's one thing I do want to point to you, Thomas. It's not a team-wide adaptation of the torpedo bats. It's player by player. And people don't realize it's not like you just have 5 torpedo bats sitting in the dugout. And you go, you know what? I'm going to step up today and use the torpedo bat. No, you have to get it fitted for you. You have to take thousands of swings in a lab for them to get the right technology for your specific swing. Don't think that Anthony Volpe just picked up a torpedo bat one day and started hitting home runs. That's not how it works. So, I like dispelling any notions of the torpedo bat being cheating, and let's go Dodgers. Thanks, guys, for letting me call in, and great show.
Thanks, Nick.
Thank you. Don't love how a Dodgers fan made that point, but I do love the point in general. He
gave love to the Yankees.
Yeah, he did, but
I think almost too much love. I think I've had
Dodgers
conversations
fan,
with her.
that was surprising for me.
Yeah, where I think during the World Series he was in a Yankees group chat and he said, "Frederick Freeman, let's go," after he hit the walk-off grand slam, and
100%.
I think that's a little ridiculous. I think that's distasteful.
He definitely still sends gifs of it to his friends. He definitely still has like a video of it sending to his friends, but I do love the argument that it is the user. It's not the bat itself, it's the user. And like you said,
Harry Potter. This is why we brought Harry Potter
exactly.
in. It's not the wand. It's the wielder.
I do love that. I love that.
Fantastic point.
This segment has been great. Not necessarily all about Mets, but a lot of torpedo bats and a lot of good callers coming in, and we do love that, as this is New York's longest running sports call-in show, but that will do it for the Mets segment as we move on to the greater MLB in our next segment, and we'll see you after this break, and don't go anywhere.
Hi, this is Michael Kay, WFUV class of 1982. WFUV is your home for all things Fordham athletics, with live coverage of Fordham football, Fordham men's and women's basketball, in addition to our Saturday show, One on One. Stay right here on 90.7 FM for all things WFUV sports.
welcome back to One on One, New York's longest running sports call-in show. Again, I'm Derek Beaulieu, joined by Thomas Tisdale and Nathan Rogers. But before we get back into the MLB, let's go back to the hardwood. We still have some Nets tickets to give away. So if you'd like to call in, you can do so. So you just got to answer the question to our wonderful producer. The newest Brooklyn Net, Drew Timme, in his first 3 games combined for 39 points. Which Net holds the record for the most points in his first 3 games? All you got to do is call 718-817-2750 for tickets to the Nets-Hawks game. All right, now that we got...
I love those jingles, by the way.
Absolutely wonderful, whoever made those. But as we get that out of the way, hopefully we can get some Nets tickets given out. But let's go into some more MLBs. We talked New York baseball, but there's a lot more going on around the league. And I know, Nathan, you're from the West Coast. Do you want to talk any West Coast baseball at all?
Yeah. So I'm from I was born in San Francisco, so I grew up watching the Giants. I was always an A's fan, but I've been disrespected by the A's. So and they moved out of Oakland quick. After they spent $0 in free agency in like 2022-ish, 2023, and also probably previous years, God knows. But $0 in the 21st century in free agency is insane. I mean, like, the Dodgers spend how much on payroll, and the A's spend
billions at this point.
They spend nada. Okay, so that was disrespectful to me and all the fan base. I used to go to like 20 games a year for the A's. I have like so many jerseys, bobbleheads, all that. But I've kind of adopted the Giants as kind of my home base. I don't know if I would consider myself like a Giants fan per se, but you know, I'm up on what's going on over in the NL. NL West, I think it's gonna. What division last year had 3 teams go to the play? AL Central. Teams that go
AL Central.
AL Central. I think
Yes.
the NL West is going to be the new AL Central. I think 3 teams are going to make it in. I think it's going to be really close, but I think the Dodgers, Padres, and Giants are all going to make it in. I think the Giants are really good. They're 6-1, and the NL West is really strong.
I agree with that for the most part. I am sad to say I don't know about the Giants because the Diamondbacks are a very, very, very good team. Last year, they just missed out of the playoffs after the year before making it to the World Series, but last year they had the number 1 offense in the league. They scored the most runs out of any team, but their big downfall was they were bottom 5 in pitching. So they allowed a lot of runs while they scored a lot, but they've really fixed their pitching. I mean, they've had Zach Gallen for a while, and he's a very good player, as we saw against the Yankees. He had 13 strikeouts and shut down the Yankees, but they also added past Cy Young winner Corbin Burns. And Corbin Burns is a very big addition to this Arizona team. He's really going to help with their pitching, and he might make a really big difference in that starting rotation. But they've also made some acquisitions in their bullpen, as we saw in that New York series. So it seems like Arizona really fixed some of their issues in their pitching, and they still have a lot of their players from when they had a really good offense. I mean, they just extended Ketel Marte. They have Corbin Carroll, who had a really bad first half last year, but he's looking a lot better so far this year, and they just have so many different pieces to fit into that starting 9. They look really good. They look like a really solid team, and they took a series from the Yankees away in New York. So
thanks to Zach Gallen, he dealt.
I was at that game. It was
that the second game of the series?
Yes,
right?
it was bad.
dealing.
I was at that game. The Yankees ended up losing 4-3. They were scoreless through 8 1/3 when after Anthony Volpe hit a 3-run home run with a torpedo bat to make it a 1-run game, but the Yankees couldn't complete the comeback. But the Diamondbacks look really good so far, and the statistics say so. They look very good.
Yeah, the NL West is just absolutely loaded. Of course, the Dodgers are guaranteed to make the postseason. The Padres, I think we had questions about their lineup coming into the season, but they look incredible. The Giants obviously are good, and then the Diamondbacks' explosive offense have reloaded their pitching staff. And you made the comparison to the AL Central, and one of the reasons that the AL Central had so many teams in the playoffs last year is because of how historically bad the Chicago White Sox were, and that the teams above the White Sox in that division were just able to absolutely just load up on basically free wins because of how bad the White Sox were. And I think that can be a pretty similar thing in the NL West with the Colorado Rockies, and we talked about in the very beginning of the show how bad the Rockies were, and they've continued to be bad. I think they're going to try to sell off whatever pieces they have at the deadline, and I think we can see the Rockies be a potentially historically really bad team, and I think the NL West and the other opponents in that division can rely on that and basically get free wins from the Rockies, and maybe we'll see 3 to 4 teams from this NL West division make the playoffs. And you talked about, Nathan, about how you're partial to the Giants because you grew up in San Francisco, but then you also have the A's. I unfortunately did not have that luxury growing up in Tennessee, and the closest team to me was the Atlanta Braves, and I want to talk about the Atlanta Braves.
Oh no,
0-7.
Yeah,
like I recognize that
because no team with this record to start out has made the postseason.
Correct. I obviously starting off with the Padres, who look really good this year, and the Dodgers is unfortunately a bad way to start the season, but going 0-7 is just unacceptable.
Especially with a team that looks like, and I personally had them winning the NL East. I thought they were going to make big adjustments last year. They had so many injuries. I figured maybe the injuries would come back and they would be stronger and better. But like you said, starting 0-7 is just not the way to do it. They finally snapped their streak. They won yesterday 10-0 against the Marlins, finally getting themselves a win. But, I mean, like you said, it's just not the way to do it. And as we mentioned, no team 0-7 has ever made the playoffs.
Do you think the Braves make the playoffs? I think they have a lineup that's good enough, and obviously they have a pitching staff that maybe hasn't been clicking in the same way that we expected them to. But you get Acuna Jr. back, and he's obviously going to be a major lift for this offense. I think the Braves, I recognize that no team has made it starting 0-7. No team has made the playoffs. But I think the Braves have the lineup to do it, and of course the Nationals and the Marlins are still in that division. So I think they have opportunities for momentum, to gather some momentum, and then maybe we'll see them sneak into the playoffs. I'm not entirely sure. I think they can still make the playoffs, and I think they have a good chance to, but obviously starting 0-7 is not ideal.
Jackson Profar now being out because of PEDs.
Jurickson Profar.
Yeah, sorry. Now because of the PED scandal that's happening, like
80 games, right?
Yeah, half the season, and he's not eligible to play in the postseason.
That's true.
So the Braves aren't going anywhere. Also, Derek, excuse me, very disrespectful to the Mets, man. Being the top of the NL East, I would say the Phillies before I would say the Braves.
I mean, the Braves have so many pieces that were injured last year.
They're all injured again now.
They aren't okay. They do have a lot of injuries still, but they still have a lot of players that came back. And they still snuck into the playoffs last year, so I figured they would make adjustments. The newer players would get experience. They would play better. And they had a lot of players struggle last year that were still on the team. Matt Olson struggled quite a bit. And I figured they would make adjustments and maybe take the division once again because they did the past few years. So that was kind of my thinking. And I also did not want to put the Mets. So
I know you didn't want to put the Mets, but there was good reason to put the Mets because they are the more talented team in the NL.
And also, if you want to go Phillies, I think the Phillies personally, if the Phillies don't win this year, then they won't win the next year.
They are done.
The Phillies are they're a very old team, for a lack of a better term. They're very old. A lot of their players have been around on the Phillies for a very long time. I mean, Bryce Harper's getting older. I mean, Nick Castellanos is getting older. I mean, Deichi Realmuto's getting older. I mean, a lot of their players are just aging so much that honestly, if they don't win this year, they might not be able to recover and make a run next year.
Yeah, with especially how loaded the NL is in terms of young talent, I think this is championship or bust for the Phillies, and it's going to be interesting to see if they are aggressive in terms of acquiring pieces at the trade deadline. Obviously, I think their pitching staff is among the best in all of MLB, and they have a good enough lineup to compete. It's just whether they click at the right time. And I think we brought up Jurickson Profar and his 80-game PED suspension, and I've seen a lot of debate online about whether if it's clear to me that he was able to get the contract that he got. I think he gets like $12 million this year, then $14 million, then $14 million for around $42 million overall. Did he intentionally take these PEDs just to get a bigger contract year, or was this just simply just a one-off? Someone was trying to take
So
steroids.
What he was found with was a masking agent for the PEDs, so he was definitely intentionally taking these PED. Well, sorry, I don't want to say definitely because I am not qualified in this department.
Yeah.
But in my own personal opinion, there's no way that you are taking a masking agent for the PEDs and you don't say anything other than I would never take PEDs, but I will take the suspension. Not literally, I'll take the suspension and I'll do it. That's not something where it says I'm not guilty and I'll fight this till the end. He literally said, I didn't take PEDs. I took this, and I'm taking the suspension. He was definitely taking PEDs for just any reason, whatever reason he was doing it for. But there's definitely a reason why he was doing it.
Yeah, I mean, I can agree with that, and I also agree with you, Thomas. He might have done it simply to maybe make some money. I mean, Jurickson Profar is kind of seen as, before his big season with the Padres, as one of the bigger busts in MLB history. I mean, he was rated very, very, very highly in prospects. I believe he was the number one prospect for a while. But then when he came up to the majors, he's had so many defensive woes, offensive woes. His offense never really clicked. But then you just randomly see him pop out of nowhere. I believe he's 30 now with the Padres, and he just has this explosive season to help push the Padres toward the postseason. But now that we're seeing that he is suspected of PEDs, not officially confirmed, but I mean there was PEDs in his system. It's makes you wonder why, and if it was to get a contract.
I think the larger question is that he really didn't really have anything to lose. You know, you mentioned how disappointing he was. It's not like he's going to be banned from the Hall of Fame because he took PEDs. He really had nothing to lose except to get more money, and then he gets suspended 80 games. It's like, okay, he's an older player that I really don't think that's going to be a detriment to him in terms of his impact for this Braves team. So I don't know. It just feels it's disheartening, especially from a morality standpoint, to see someone cheat the game in such a way, and then the repercussion really not being that dramatic. He's losing $6 million a year just because he's missing half the season. It's a little disappointing.
They need someone to replace him too, though.
That's true.
Yeah.
The Braves are already struggling as it is, and they're now 1-7. But on the other side of the coin, the Dodgers and Padres just got served their first loss of the season, as they were undefeated for quite a bit. How do we think that the Dodgers are going to fare this season, other than they're going to win the West with over 100 wins?
I mean, this lineup is just incredible. I think the only thing that can get in the way of it are these freak injuries. We saw this happen to Freddie Freeman, where he's stepping into the shower or stepping out of the shower and he twists his ankle. It's going to take multiple of those for this Dodgers team to be deterred from their path to the championship. I think the lineup's too good. The starting pitching is too good. Sasaki obviously has had some struggles with control and emotions coming in, but their pitching staff is more than deep enough to compensate for that. Yeah, this Dodgers team is incredible. I almost get tired of talking about how good they are. It's frustrating to watch sometimes. But yeah, I mean, this is an incredible team.
Stacked lineup. They're basically kind of like the Duke of MLB right now. They just have everything clicking for them. They're second in the league in home runs with 19. They only have one loss, and it's just great to watch such a good team. And they might go back to back. I mean, it's not crazy to say that. And do you think that they'll win? How many games do you think they'll win? 120? I don't even know.
I think that it's definitely not out of the question. I think the only thing would be that towards the late of the season, when they already have the division in hand, do they just start resting guys for October? And I think that's definitely in the cards. But it's just going to be interesting to see how dominant this Dodgers team. It's not a question of if they make the postseason. It's how early do they clinch the postseason, basically.
Right. Yeah. And then one final thing before we end this segment, Shohei Ohtani is obviously one of the best players on the planet, but he hasn't been pitching recently. What do we think we're going to see out of him when he finally does start pitching, if he does start pitching? Because he's been pushed back quite a bit. It was originally going to be this year he was going to start pitching at the beginning of the year. He's been throwing a little bit, but now he's kind of been pushed back to, I believe, May, maybe even June. what do we think we're going to see from Shohei after 2 Tommy John surgeries?
It's going to be interesting to see. I think he obviously is going to lose some of that velocity. I don't think he's going to be nearly as dominant as we saw in 2022 pre-Tommy John surgery. But the value that Ohtani provides excluding pitching is already so tremendous just as a DH.
Yeah.
That and the Dodgers have a deep enough rotation that they don't even really need him to pitch.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessary for him to be on the mound. I think MVP is his award to lose this year for
even
sure.
without pitching.
I think people talk about Judge 50 plus home runs, maybe 60. But I think Ohtani's right up there, and I think he might actually have 60 dingers as well. I think both of them might. And I love how we talk about torpedo bats and all that stuff, and both of these guys are like, I don't need a torpedo. I'm going to hit everything out of the yard. But yeah, I think if Ohtani's not even on the mound, I don't think it matters.
Yeah, and I think that will do it for our MLB section as we'll head over back to New York to cover some Giants and Jets football maybe in the offseason. But we're going to go to break real quick. Don't leave us yet. We're almost at the end of the show. We'll see you after the break.
Hi, my name is Ryan Rucco, WFUV class of 2008. WFUV is your home for all things Fordham athletics, with live coverage of Fordham football, Fordham men's and women's basketball, in addition to our Saturday show, One-on-One. Stay right here on 90.7 FM for all things WFUV sports.
All our games on 90.7 FM and the WFUV Sports YouTube page. And make sure to fill the hill this season as we celebrate 100 years in the Rose Hill Gym. WFUV is the home of Fordham basketball. Let's go Rams.
Hey sports fans, it's Bobby C. I'm the sports director here at WFUV. From live broadcasts of Fordham athletics to coverage of all the professional sports teams in the NYC, we've got everything a sports fan could ask for. Like talking sports? Check out One-on-One, New York's longest-running sports call-in show, as well as our diverse collection of podcasts. If you're a Fordham student interested in joining our program, feel free to shoot me an email, bobbyc@wfuv.org. And as always, thank you to all of our listeners who support us every week. 90.7 FM is the home of WFUV Sports.
Hey guys, Grace McCarran here with Jack Warner.
And we're two of your hosts for Nosebleeds, WFUV's one and only baseball podcast.
We'll keep you in the loop on all tri-state news with the Yankees and Mets,
as well as the biggest headlines from around the MLB.
Catch weekly episodes of Nosebleeds on Spotify, Apple Music, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Take a trip around the bases with Nosebleeds on WFUV Sports.
Welcome back to One on One, New York's longest running sports call-in show. We're going to talk Giants and Jets, and then we'll finally end off the show with Alex Ovechkin's pursuit for the NHL goals record. If you'd like to call in and talk any of this with us, the number is 718-817-2750. We're in the middle of the NFL offseason here. We're a bit of a transition period between the end of the free agency has ended, and we're just now gearing up for the NFL draft, which is going to happen April 24th through 26th. And a conversation, we're going to keep it local here with the New York teams, has been the Giants quarterback situation. The Giants have the number 3 pick, and the two top quarterbacks on the board in the NFL draft, Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders, have the potential to be gone by the 3rd pick, and the Giants would be left with basically nothing in terms of finding a quarterback for the future. And so in order to adapt for that, they signed Jameis Winston first, a pretty risky guy who's going to get you a lot of touchdowns a game, but is also going to throw a lot of interceptions. We saw this with the Browns last year. And then they also get Russell Wilson, who is obviously way past his peak and needs a little bit more structure in terms of the team around him. I don't know if the Giants team can provide him that. And so the question now is, what do the Giants do with that 3rd pick? Do they draft a quarterback for the future and have a incredibly crowded QB room, or do they get the next best position player in Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter? Derek, we'll start with you. What do you think what will the Giants draft strategy be with that number 3 pick?
I think focusing quarterback is definitely not a bad idea. I mean, you do have Russ and you do have Jameis, but those guys are not franchise quarterbacks. Those guys are not going to be there for a super long time to keep your team alive and keep your team going. And you have some good wide receivers. You have some good offensive pieces like Malik Neighbors to build around in the next few years. So I think it'd be good to get a quarterback early if one falls to you. No reason not to take a quarterback if one falls to you. If you're able to, because then you can build around the quarterback for the future, and they can learn from guys like Russ. Maybe they can learn from guys like Jameis. They can, like you said, sit in that crowded quarterback room and learn, and definitely just like keep learning and keep advancing their game. It's definitely not a bad idea for the Giants. They can draft pieces later and build around the quarterback maybe in the next draft.
Yeah, I think the quarterback situation is so complex for NFL teams because once you have your guy, that's like 70% of your issues is when you have your guy at quarterback, you're kind of set because then you can build around him. You can sign him to a deal, right? But the Giants just have not found that guy. They just don't have their guy yet. So I think they have that number 3 pick. I really think they should use it on Abdul Carter. I think Shedeur Sanders is going to drop out of the top 10 from things that I've thought about, from things I've read. They talked about on the Colin Cowherd, The Herd Show, like he's going to fall, and like this might be like last year with the quarterbacks like dropping a little bit. I don't think his stock right now is that high, and I think that they don't go Shedeur Sanders. I think they go Abdul Carter, and I think a pass rusher opposite Brian Burns is what this team could really need, and focusing on the offensive line and the defensive line is, I think, what the Giants really need to hone in on. It's because I talked about how once you have that guy at quarterback, it really helps you out. But once you have like both of the lines figured out in football, it's like then you can build from there as well, because that's like going from the ground up. So I think they need to focus on the line of scrimmage and get Abdul Carter there. Yeah, but like they got to figure out the quarterback situation.
Yeah, this Giants team is a long way away from contending for a playoff spot, for a Super Bowl. And you mentioned how this quarterback class isn't as loaded as this past year's. And I think that the Giants need to be smart, and they need to evaluate and say, we're a long way from contention. Let's not try to accelerate the rebuild by reaching on a quarterback that may just be an average middle-of-the-pack quarterback in the NFL. I think they can wait until next year's class to do that. So I like the Giants picking Abdul Carter in with that number 3 pick. And now we're going to stay in MetLife. We're going to talk about the Jets, who have also had QB issues. Their main signing from free agency was Justin Fields, former Bear, former Steeler, now signed with the New York Jets. Do you think Justin Fields provides the answer for the New York Jets at a quarterback position? Are they better off than they were last year?
I think they're definitely better off last year, but I don't know if Fields is the answer super long term. I think he can be the answer for a year, maybe a few years, but he's definitely, I don't think, the answer for a long time. Justin Fields is a very good quarterback, especially when he has the tools to do what he needs to do. He can definitely use his legs to do basically whatever he wants on the field whenever he's hot, but I don't know if he has the skills to carry a Jets team super far, and I don't know if the Jets yet have the tools or the players to necessarily keep him going and keep him to carry a team like the Jets right now.
Yeah, because you look last year on the Steelers, he took that starting job because Russ was out like before week 1.
Yeah.
He comes back like week 6 or something like that, or week 7, and Fields doesn't get the job, and the Steelers struggle down the stretch, and he doesn't even get it there. So it's like everyone liked him out of Ohio State. I really liked him. People said he was really smart. He's known for his legs. He's good at reading the field. He's 26. He's young. He completed 106 of his 161 passes for 65%. That's pretty good. But I think for those, just having like 6 starts at the helm of a team, for you to trust a guy like that, and for we talked about how the Giants are just like they're in rebuild mode, right? And they probably won't win like more than 5 games this year, probably. I think it's a good I think this is like experimental. I don't think it's like a huge commitment, but I don't hate the move.
Yeah, I think this is 100% an upgrade from Aaron Rodgers last year. I think Justin Fields, just because of his mobility, is a lot better than Aaron Rodgers. He can play outside of just the set play and can extend plays just because of his legs.
And also way less drama than
absolutely.
the prima donna of Rodgers. Yeah.
I think Jets just need a cultural reset. They need to go back to playing fundamental football, whatever that looks like. And I agree that Justin Fields doesn't provide the long-term answer for the Jets. And the Jets are in this weird period where they don't have an answer at quarterback, but they're not nearly as bad enough that they can just tank for the best quarterback in next year's class. So the Jets are going to be in this perpetual state of mediocrity, and it's going to be interesting to see where they go from here. I'm excited to see Justin Fields play for the Jets and have a true number 1 in Garrett Wilson.
Yeah, and the Jets, I'm just sorry, I'm going to interrupt you there, but the Jets like having almost like F grades on you saw that on the NFL, they sent out a survey for people that don't know, for people in the organization, things they rate like food, travel, family, how they treat the families, blah blah blah. The Jets were so bad in every category. They were the worst in the NFL. So I think the whole organization needs to just a flip flop. I don't think Rodgers was the answer there. I have no idea what's going on with that, but the Jets just top to bottom needed just a reset.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is going to do it for our football segment. It's going to be interesting to see how the Jets and Giants attack the draft and what they're going to be looking like heading into next season. Our final segment of the show is coming up. Alex Ovechkin and his pursuit for the NHL goals record. And we're just going to be talking about that record and what it means for sports. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
I'm Chaz McAdams.
And I'm Ben Oppenheimer.
And we are 2 of your hosts for On the Hill, the flagship podcast of Fordham Athletics.
We'll be talking about everything from football at Moglia Stadium
to hoops at the historic Rose Hill Gym,
discussing the ins and outs of all Ram athletes, teams, and big games.
If you want to be part of the Ramily, then listen to On the Hill from WFUV Sports.
Hi, this is Ben Oppenheimer reminding you to tune in to New York's longest running sports call-in show, One on One. Catch One on One live on the WFUV Sports YouTube channel every Saturday from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. and then later on 90.7 FM from 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. We'll catch you next Saturday on One on One.
Welcome back to One on One, New York's longest running sports call-in show. I'm again Derek Beaulieu, joined by Thomas Tisdale and Nathan Rogers. And now we're going to go into our final section and final discussion of the show. We're going to be talking about Alex Ovechkin's record that he's soon to break, hopefully, barring anything horrible happening. He's tied currently for the record of the most goals in NHL history. And it's a very impressive goal. It's been held for a while by, obviously, the GOAT of NHL, Wayne Gretzky. But is this the craziest record that we're going to see get broken in a while? Like, is this a crazy record that we never thought would happen?
I think so. I'm looking at a list of other impossible, unbreakable records. And it just, you talk about LeBron's 50K plus combined points. You talk about Emmett Smith's 18,000 rushing yards. You talk about Wayne Gretzky's, obviously, 1,900 career assists. I think this was not undoubtedly, but it was an incredibly hard goal to reach, but this was the one that felt the most accessible. Obviously, I think people thought it might take a little bit longer than it did, but this was the goal that felt achievable, and credit to Alex for what he's been doing. He's been playing phenomenal. Absolutely one of the best scorers of this generation of hockey players, and he's been absolutely incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. But going back to LeBron and his 50K points, do we think that him breaking the original scoring record is crazier than Ovechkin right now? Do we think more points in the NBA is crazier than more goals in the NHL? Are they about the same? What was the viewpoint on the NBA record before it was broken by LeBron? Because I feel like it was a little more like this will never get broken.
Yeah, I think there was definitely a mystique about it never getting broken. But I think Alex Ovechkin breaking Wayne Gretzky's record is more impressive just because of how much more physical hockey is. I think basketball is a sport. Undoubtedly, it is a physical sport. But it's one of those where if you treat your body in the right way and you have a relatively injury-free career, you can play until you're 35, 40 like LeBron is doing. And so just because of that fact, I think Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's record was a little bit more achievable. I think Wayne Gretzky, Alex Ovechkin is an old guy, and it took he broke his fibula this year or something like that. Mm-hmm. And so he's gone through countless injuries, and he's found a way to bounce back. And I think that is harder to do and harder to replicate than LeBron's just consistent scoring over a 20-year period.
Yeah, I also think an underrated record that not a lot of people think about, but Jerry Rice's receiving yards record is something like to tip your cap to. And I think that will take a lot of time and players and drafts to see someone even close to coming to that. Like the active leader is Hopkins, like DeAndre Hopkins with like 12,000 yards, and Jerry Rice has like 22, almost 23,000.
And Hopkins is basically out of the league at this point.
Exactly.
He's on the Ravens, but he's not nearly as good as he was.
Right, and a big part of that was like Jerry Rice's durability was just like insane. Like when you think about durability, I close my eyes and I think about like LeBron, Jerry Rice, like all those guys. And he also had good fortune of like having Joe Montana and Steve Young as his quarterbacks. I just think that situation you're in, to have that record is something that probably I just don't think it like being repeated.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite sayings in sports is that availability is the best ability to have, and it's hard to quantify being injury-free except just by how many games you play. And the fact that Jerry Rice, like you mentioned, that LeBron, like Wayne Gretzky, and like Ovechkin have been able to do is they've been able to play at a high level over an incredibly long career. And it's impressive that they've been able to play this long, but also to sustain that level of excellence is incredibly impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like how much they've been playing at like such a high level for so long. I mean, LeBron's been at it since before I was born. I mean, Ovechkin's 39 now. I mean, he's been playing at a high level for such a long time, and that's why he's able to break records like this. I mean, this is an insane record. You don't see every year someone break a record for the most, literally like scoring the most in any kind of sport, especially a Big Four sport like in America. But I have some other records written down that I kind of want to discuss. Maybe we can talk about, maybe rank them a little bit, maybe see which one's most unbreakable.
Let's do it.
I have 4 right here that we can rank. The first one, actually it's 5 technically, because I have 2 Barry Bonds records. Obviously his single season home run record of 73, we talked about a little bit earlier with Aaron Judge, but also his career home run record of 762. What do we think about both of those kind of combined? We can talk about them a little separately, but they're pretty similar, obviously, with home runs. But what do we think?
I think the single season one is more achievable and more likely to happen. We talked about Judge potentially doing that. I think players are likely to have a season where they get incredibly hot. And as technology advances, we talk about the torpedo bat. I think a player's ability to hit that many home runs is undoubtedly more possible. I think the sustained success that Barry Bonds had is far away in a age where you will get intentionally walked if you have a sustained season like that. I just don't think the Barry Bonds 762 home runs is achievable. I don't think that will ever be broken. I hope someone proves me wrong, but I just don't think that baseball players are good enough and will be good enough for a 15-year career in order to replicate something like that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. What were the other options? Can you just repeat it?
Yeah. That was the first one, just Bonds' single-season home run record. The next one I have, which might be the one that we rank number 1 is the hardest to break, is Joe DiMaggio's hit streak record of 56 games, which is just absolutely insane. I mean, getting a hit in 56 games at all is impressive for any normal person, but 56 games in a row as an MLB player is just absolutely insane.
That's insane.
I mean,
that is insane.
Getting even we talk now in modern baseball about getting on base. On base percentage has become a super big thing, especially with older guys, maybe like Joey Votto. His big thing was he always got on base. Getting on base 56 games in a row is a very, very impressive feat. But Joe DiMaggio won up that. I mean, he got 56 games with a hit in a row. I mean, it's mind-boggling to think about this record. I mean, it's insane, and I personally don't think this record will even get close to being touched ever.
Yeah, because you have to think about like all those records, like all those like you think about like LeBron's like 50,000 points and all that stuff. It's mostly like time, skill, like situation and stuff. But I feel like in baseball, because like hitting is so hard, you have to factor in like luck, like hitting the ball consecutively for 56 games. I mean, that's like 2 months of baseball or like plus, right? Of just literally getting a hit every day, like waking up and like knowing you're going to get a hit. And I feel like that's a little bit of luck in there too. So I think that's just got to be up there and unbreakable. Yeah.
Baseball is 100% a sport of luck at some points. I mean, you could literally do everything right as a player and you could still find your way back to the dugout. I mean, you could literally hit the ball on the screws, but it happens to go right to the shortstop. You could hit it 110 miles an hour, and you're still out. Baseball is just such a game of luck and such a game of other players
superstitions.
Yes.
And like when I played, like if you stepped on the first base line, like if you stepped on it, you can't. This is a cardinal sin. I remember it was like literally my second game ever. It was like on travel ball, someone pushed me and I stepped on the line and my coach was mad. And I had a horrible game. So I'm sure that Joe DiMaggio didn't step on a line for 56 games.
I'm sure he didn't. I'm sure he did. Other superstitions, which is a topic for a very, very different day. Baseball superstitions can be very, very weird, but the next record I have written down is another hockey record. I actually have Gretzky with his total goals, so his goals and assists combined, his record with that. His goal record currently is being touched, but I don't think
Doesn't he have like 2,000 assists or something?
Yeah. I think that might be above Joe DiMaggio's
you
think?
hitting streak. I think the hitting streak feels achievable, even though it's totally not. Like the idea that I just need to put the bat to the ball for 56 consecutive games, like that feels achievable, right? But the points, total points things, that feels just out there. I think the NHL is too talented. I think a lot of people critique Gretzky because the goals were bigger or the goalies had less padding back in the day, and so it was a little bit easier to score those goals and get those assists. But I think the talent in the NHL is too much for one single guy to have that level of sustained success. I think as soon as if let's say over a 10-year period, you're on pace to do that. I think the talent coming into the NHL, I think people are faster, stronger, smarter, quicker, whatever it may be. I think the talent coming in will just eventually overwhelm you, and I just don't think you can have that level of success over a 20-year career.
Yeah, sustained success in anything, especially in sports that change so much over your entire career, is just so difficult. That's why all the greats they're the ones able to sustain their success, not only staying in the league that they're in for 20-something years, however long they play, but playing at a high level for as long as they are. I mean, the most notable example of longevity is LeBron still playing, scoring 20-plus points a game at the ripe old age of 41. But, I mean, it's hard to sustain anything like that for such a long period of time, especially something like Gretzky's record would have to be at the very least 20 years of sustained amazing success. Yeah. It's just not even feasible for anyone currently.
One thing that was interesting that I saw in the broadcast yesterday after Ovechkin had those 2 goals and was one away from breaking the record was that he had a conversation with the manager, and the Blackhawks, who they were playing, were down 4-3. So there was likely to be an empty goal scenario in which Ovechkin would have an opportunity to break the record on an empty goal. And we couldn't quite make out the exchange, but it was perhaps a thing where Ovechkin was like, I don't want to break it this way. I want it to be like an actual goal. And so that raises the question, I think we only have time for short responses, was like, does it matter how you break the record, or does it just matter that you just break the record in general and people won't really remember that final shot or that final goal that eventually broke that record?
I think you just break it. Right?
I don't know. I think it matters. I think if you do it in a really cool way, it's good for, maybe not for the fans, but it's good for you. I mean, you can look back on that moment that you didn't shoot into an empty net. You shot into a contested net, and one of your greatest goals was the one that broke the record.
Yeah.
So I think it's mostly for the player himself rather than the fans. But before we end, I have one last record that I'd like to talk about, and it's Wilt's 100-point game. I want to see what you guys think about.
That's not happening. It's just
never getting broken?
Yeah.
What
Definitely
do you think
not.
compared to the other records? Do you think it's more feasible?
I think it's possible in today's NBA just because of a guy can get hot from
70, so yeah.
Yeah, I think the talent in the NBA is a little bit more even than it was in Wilt's game. I think he was playing against plumbers. That's not a debate. I think the 100-point game is relatively unfeasible. I think it can be done potentially, but we'll see.
It's going to be a while before anything like that happens, but I think that will do it.
That's going to do it for us in the historic Rose Hill studio. Just as a reminder, March Madness Final Four tonight. Florida plays Auburn at 6:09 first tip. Houston plays Duke at 8:49. Yankees also play today at 4 p.m., 4:05 first pitch, and the Knicks play at 3. Again, that's going to do it for us here in the Rose Hill studio. It's been great to share the desk today with my wonderful co-hosts and hear everyone's insights on March Madness, the torpedoes of baseball, NBA, NFL, and everything in between. A huge thank you to everyone who called in, tuned in, and joined us today on this Saturday. And before we go, I just wanted to take a moment to thank my amazing co-hosts Thomas Tisdale and Derek Beaulieu, as well as our radio producer, Kurt Sipple. Our sports director is Bobby Cefferdini, and One on One is a production of WFUV Sports.